This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
The London Assembly is the voice of London, composed of 25 members elected at the same time as the Mayor in order to hold him to account and scrutinise his policies. This is a Mayor's Question Time meeting of the Assembly, which means that all members are invited to attend and ask questions of the Mayor. Can I welcome members, officers and the public here in the gallery and watching on the webcast. In case of emergency and any need to exit the building, guests seated in the public gallery should follow the security staff and Assembly members should follow the meeting clerk. Please may I remind you to silence your devices, and can I ask the Mayor and members to position your microphones so that you can be heard, moving it closer to you by picking it up from the base and not the neck. Members are reminded that any electronic devices should not be placed in front of microphones, which must be turned on to speak and turned off once finished. Members are also reminded to turn off any mobile hotspots for the duration of the meeting. Can I now ask the clerk, Lauren Harvey, to confirm any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from the Deputy Chair, Assembly Member Dr Sahota and Assembly Member Best.
Thank you. Before we continue, on behalf of the Assembly, I would like to share my deepest sympathies and condolences to the loved ones and colleagues of Alan Benson, MBE, Deputy Chair of London Travel Watch, who sadly passed away on Sunday. Since the last Assembly member meeting at the plenary session on the 7th of December, continuing its scrutiny of the Mayor's 2024-25 budget, the Budget and Performance Committee examined what progress will be made on tackling London's housing crisis. The following day, the Budget and Performance Committee considered the financial sustainability of the Greater London Authority Group, including the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime, Transport for London and the London Fire Brigade. The Economy Committee examined what impact increased levels of working from home has had on central London's economy. The GLA Oversight Committee published a report on devolution in London with recommendations to the Mayor and Government on how devolution can benefit Londoners. For its monthly Q&A session, the Police and Crime Committee discussed topics including the London Policing Board, child protection and policing protests with the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. As part of an investigation into consultations run by the Greater London Authority, the GLA Oversight Committee considered past consultations across the organisation and if more rigorous processes are needed. The Transport Committee examined key priorities for the DLR, including how much of an issue fare evasion is on the network. The Budget and Performance Committee quizzed Transport for London officials on their 24-25 budget submissions, including what level of fare increase should be expected. As part of an investigation into protecting and enhancing London's green spaces, the Environment Committee explored how green spaces are protected in London and what the threats are. Finally, the Audit Panel considered internal audit reports, including the Corporate Risk Register and expenses monitoring. And as Chair of the Assembly, it was great to join GLA staff at the Christmas party last week and reflect on some of the highlights from 2023. Thanks once again to all the staff who worked so hard to ensure that this was a success. And I do hope that all the staff have a very restful holiday. However, the downside of that particular party was when I invited Sadiq to renew the tradition that we had in the Assembly of the Chair and Mayor leading the first dance.
Hey.
May I say, I was left as a wallflower for the rest of the evening. I don't care. Anyway, declarations. Let's go on to declarations of interest. Can I ask the Assembly to note the interests set out at item 2? Do Assembly members have any other disclosable pecuniary interests which relate to the items on the agenda for today's meeting? Or any other relevant interests, including any declarations in relation to gifts, hospitality, which are not reflected on the authority's register of gifts and hospitality? You know, I wish we could come up with a phrase that's quicker than that, you know, but I'm sure I have to say that for legal reasons, but sorry about that. Can I ask the Assembly to formally to receive the Mayor's report covering the period from the 3rd of November to the 7th of December? The Mayor will now provide an oral update of up to 5 minutes in length on matters occurring since the publication of his report. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'd like to address an issue which inevitably comes to the fore at this time of year, homelessness. First, I want to express how humbled I am by Londoners who, since 2017, have donated over £700,000 through our annual Rough Sleeping campaign. The Tap London contact points are live once again, as is the website for anyone who wishes to contribute, and the Street Link website, which can be used to connect rough sleepers with local support services too. I know ending rough sleeping is a priority for Londoners, and it's an ambition I share. Since 2016, we've quadrupled City Hall's homelessness budget, successfully helping over 16,000 people to get off the streets, 3/4 of whom have stayed off. We've also now delivered more than 1,500 long-term homes for rough sleepers. And today, we've announced a further £200,000 to expand our night transport outreach team to end the cycle of homelessness for hundreds of people sleeping rough on the TfL network. Despite all this and more, we still have a long way to go. The reality is the government's policies are exacerbating this crisis faster than we can ease it. Numbers are rising across Britain, and London, as so often, is feeling this acutely. Chair, can I end by expressing my heartfelt gratitude to all our emergency services and transport network workers, especially those on duty over the festive period. I want to thank all City Hall staff, functional body staff, Development Corporation staff, MOPAC staff and London Assembly members for your commitment. And can I wish everyone present and your families a peaceful and joyous Christmas. Chair, I've been asked for one request for an oral update, and it's from Assembly Member Ellie Baker, and it's on TfL capital funding settlement. I'm relieved that we've agreed a £250 million capital funding deal with the Department for Transport, which will enable TfL to make some vital upgrades to our transport network, including upgrades to the Piccadilly Line. This funding will also mean we can continue protecting and creating jobs around the country, including in Goole, where many of the state-of-the-art trains are being made. However, it's still vitally important that we agree a decent long-term funding settlement with the government that allows TfL to plan and invest for the infrastructure London will need over the coming decades. Expanding our transport network and supporting jobs and economic growth in London has real and sizable benefits for the economy of the whole country. Following Monday's funding announcement, TfL will now need to reassess its recent draft business plan and address the impact of the continuing shortfall in funding. That work is underway, so TfL can confirm as soon as possible what it'll be able to deliver in London.
Thank you. Assembly Member Baker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, I'm glad that money has come through, but it was only half the money that TfL requested, and that was only for the essential projects that TfL feel are needed for London. And yeah, as you say, I'm aware that TfL are working through the impact of that. We questioned them at Budget and Performance Committee on Tuesday, and so that will come out in shortly, hopefully. But I really would like to ask, from your point of view, is there a danger that, considering that's 250 million under what's needed, is there an impact, is there a potential impact on operating costs and therefore a direct impact on passengers and services?
There will be, if not today, down the road. So TfL needs, roughly speaking, between £2 and £3 billion a year to renew, replace stock. Think about the trains, the trams, the buses and so forth. This year's capital budget was constrained to just be £2 billion. And TfL managed to find 3/4 of that capital expenditure. By the way, no other transport authority around the country or the world finds that much of its own capital expenditure. So a quarter is £500 million, which is a constrained budget. The government's given half of that. So just 12.5% of the capital budget, the constrained budget next year. So TfL are trying to make sure the business plan balances, but it will mean choices. And it's really important Londoners are aware, as a consequence of this deal from the government, some things we think need to happen can't happen or will be delayed happening.
Okay. Thank you.
Before I ask for another contribution, can I welcome the school council from Cheam High School to this meeting?
Hi, guys.
We got the right school, good. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you find this session engaging. The Mayor is just answering questions from Assembly members on his opening remarks. And that next question is in the name of Assembly Member McCartney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to raise the Piccadilly Line again. Part of the capital that you requested was to complete phase 1 of the Piccadilly Line, which is the 94 new trains that are due to start arriving from 2025. Do we know whether there's sufficient money to ensure that those actually are on track and will be delivered?
That's one of the things that TfL is going through now, including speaking to Siemens. Just to remind colleagues, because of our order, this factory has moved these trains being built in Germany to our country. If we were to give certainty, they could recruit more people and create more jobs. And that's why it's really important. We've at least got this amount of money, so there is some security. We'll be speaking to the train manufacturers and TfL going through its budget to see the impact of the reduction by a half of the amount of support we need from the government. And just to remind colleagues, that in itself is only a quarter of the complete capital budget, which we found no other transport authority around the country, and I understand around the globe, finds that much of its own money for capital.
Yes, and I think it's down to your financial work that TfL is in such a good position that it is. But obviously, phase one of the Piccadilly Line is the 94 new trains. And we've obviously been lobbying government for phase two, which is the 18 additional trains, so we can have a train every 90 seconds, but also the signalling work that is needed. And I'm just really disappointed that yet again we have another short-term deal. Do you think we're going to have to wait for a change of government until we get a multi-year deal?
Well, here's the thing. Other transport authorities around the country, including Network Rail, have multi-year deals. For some reason, the government wants to punish London. We've only got a one-year deal. We now know there's got to be an election before next January. I understand from the Prime Minister's comments to journalists this week, he said there'll be a general election in 2024. So I'm afraid we'll have to wait until a change of government for certainty around our funding. And by the way, the advantage of certainty is we can then do deals in relation to procurement that we can't currently do, whether it's buses or whether it's the PIC line. You're spot on. The new trains are fantastic. I've seen them, and they will improve quality of service, improve frequency. New trains plus signalling is transformative in relation to the number of passengers we can take on one of the busiest lines in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, it goes from 20% increased capacity to 60% increased capacity. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I'll keep lobbying, and I know you will do as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to the questions on the priority order paper. Each group is allocated an amount of time to ask their questions that is proportionate to their size. The first question concerns different ways of policing protests from Assembly Member Russell.
Thank you for your question. Good morning. I want to acknowledge how operationally challenging the last few months have been for the Metropolitan Police Service due to the impact events in the Middle East have had on protest activity and sadly hate crime in London. This, combined with other protests from groups like Just Stop Oil, has resulted in the significant abstraction of officers and put pressure on the Met Police Service senior team with an inevitable effect on the well-being of officers and staff. The MPS should be commended for its professional response to the protests. I'm grateful that in a complex situation the MPS continues to police London without fear or favour. London is being served by a professional police force, adapting its operational tactics as and when required. I've always made it clear that the right to protest is a cornerstone of our democracy, but it must be peaceful and lawful. The MPS balances the rights of protesters against the need to protect the public. The policing of protests in London is the operational responsibility of the Met Police Service and the Commissioner, who have my full support in doing so. It was outrageous of the former Home Secretary to seek to interfere in the operational decisions being made by the Met Police Service around the protests a few weeks ago. Operational decisions should be left to the Commissioner and his team. I meet with the Commissioner regularly and he briefs me on a range of operational policing matters, including public order issues. During the last 8 weeks, the Met Police Service has made extensive use of a range of powers, including Section 12 and 14 of the Public Order Act 1986 and Section 35 dispersal orders. As the Commissioner noted at the London Policing Board earlier this month, the Met Police Service is facing an extraordinary period of pressure on resources, and they have declared a critical incident in response to this. This situation highlights the costs the Met Police Service incurs due to the responsibilities of police in the capital, responsibilities for which they're not fully funded. I've written to the Home Secretary to emphasise the continued underfunding of the national and international capital city grant. The government has a responsibility to properly fund the Met Police Service fully to effectively police London and keep Londoners safe, recognising the special role the Met Police Service plays in policing the nation's capital. I remain in close contact, as my Deputy Mayor does, with the Met Police Service regarding protest activity in London.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good to see you standing up for the operational independence of the Met to the former Home Secretary, and also good to be pushing for the full capital city grant, which clearly the Metropolitan Police need. Now, we've seen some constructive policing tactics during this operationally challenging period, like leaflets clarifying what is a hate crime, CPS sitting in the strategic operations room advising in real time when a criminal line is crossed, and kind of extensive correction of misinformation on social media. And it's been good to see them being light on their feet and getting on with that. But we're also seeing the Met framing the debate on protest, which feels quite political. So since May 2022, there have been 9 Met press releases and numerous social media posts mentioning the cost of policing. Of the 9 press releases, 7 were about Just Stop Oil. So are you worried that singling out Just Stop Oil could be perceived as political because the Met don't share other examples of high-cost policing?
Thank you for your question. I suspect that maybe because in recent weeks those have been the main areas of protest with the Middle East process that I referred to. I think what the Commissioner and his team are seeking to do is to, in small e, non-patronising, educate Londoners and, dare I say, the government about the impact of policing in London. I mean, no other city in the country has the level of protests, state visits, sporting events.
Mr Mayor, that's about the cost, and I've agreed with you about the cost. But this is about the Met choosing to publicise the cost of policing grannies and scientists walking slowly, while not choosing to share other costs like 3 million for an arms fair, 15 million for a football season, and 23 million for the coronation. Policing is about choices, but I've actually got no further questions right now.
Okay, sorry, I expected a ta-da at the end. Sorry about that. Assembly Member Cooper, please, for the next question, which is titled Energy Price Rise.
Good morning. Thanks for your question. The announcement of an increase in the energy price cap will affect London's poorest, with many Londoners facing the stark choice of heating or eating this winter. It's very concerning that fuel-poor households who are already struggling with high energy costs will see their bills go up even higher from January 2024 by over £100. Whilst the current fuel poverty metric doesn't consider changes in energy prices, and as such shows little impact from recent huge bill increases, by the previous definition, a 5% increase would lead to a further 30,000 London households becoming fuel poor. I'm doing everything in my power to support fuel poor households this winter. Our Warmer Homes programme has provided support of up to £25,000 to thousands of low-income Londoners to make their homes warmer, greener and cheaper to run. A year ago, I launched a new advice service, the Energy Advice London, in partnership with the Energy Saving Trust. It's open to any Londoner struggling with their energy bills. To date, the service has received over 2,300 individual inquiries and over 30,000 web page views. The most vulnerable households can also continue to receive in-home energy advice and support with energy debt from my Warmer Homes advice service. This service has already helped over 21,500 households. Over 300 key organisations across London are referral partners for the scheme, from the NHS to boroughs and the London Fire Brigade. My Cost of Living Hub continues to bring together advice and information on benefits, grants and discounts that Londoners facing financial difficulty can access. My income maximisation programme, which includes funding for advice services and direct work with boroughs to raise the uptake of pension credit, has so far put £20 million in the pockets of low-income Londoners. However, more urgent action is required, and I urge the government to do more to support vulnerable households, including introducing the Essentials Guarantee and scrapping the benefits cap. I've also been calling for the introduction of a lifeline tariff for the most vulnerable, which would allow a minimum floor of domestic energy use before charges begin. Finally, higher energy prices also highlight why it's important to phase out fossil fuels and move quickly to net zero.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. I mean, obviously, the fact that the government since 2010 slashed lots of insulation programmes was unbelievably short-sighted. So it's been very good to have the money that has gone into the Warmer Homes programme, because that's obviously the way to start, is to reduce the bills. I was interested to hear you refer to the idea of more targeted help, because last year the government gave everybody money, but targeting it towards particularly those on prepayment meters who have ended up in that situation, usually because they're struggling. Do you think there should be a social tariff of some description that is aimed specifically at people on prepayment meters?
Well, just going back to the point you made at the start of your question, the decision by the government in 2012-2013 to remove the subsidy for those insulating their homes means their homes weren't insulated, so the bills are much higher now, and we're losing energy from their homes, and it's not very efficient in relation to not just keeping people's homes warm, but also their bills as well. But I think you're right in relation to the need to target support to those who need it the most. The good news is that the prepayment meter price cap is now the same as the direct debit price cap. Before, there was huge increases in bills they had to pay. But what the government can and should be doing is supporting those who can least afford putting their heating on when it gets cold. The obvious way to do so is support those universal credit, a very simple thing you can do. One of the things I've suggested is a tariff, so they get a minimum, they get some support before they start paying for their energy. Very simple for the government to do. It will also mean that what you don't see this year is excess deaths, which is a big concern many have.
That's interesting that you mentioned that about the floor, because one of the things that is going on at the moment is that Ofgem has opened a consultation on the standing charges, which you pay, even if, of course, you don't use any gas or electricity. And mysteriously, without much consultation, they have gone through the roof of late. Now, Ofgem have finally caught up with the energy companies and are now consulting. Do you agree with Citizens Advice Bureau and others who are all starting to say that, this is something that needs to be looked at? Will you be responding to the Ofgem consultation, which I think closes in the middle of January, yourself, to say this needs to be brought under control?
No, thanks for bringing that to my attention. I'm not sure if we had that deadline marked. We'll do that and make sure I do respond, because it is a big concern, because people are paying something for nothing. We know of Londoners who aren't using any energy at all. They're wrapping up 2, 3, 4 layers, blankets, so forth.
Candles.
They're still paying, and
Which is dangerous.
Spot on. And so what we're lobbying for from the government, park for a second the Ofgem consultation, which we will respond to, is an essentials guarantee, as Joseph Rowntree have said, a lifeline tariff, and you're right in relation to this by stealth increase of standard charges, which everyone's got to pay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
The next question concerns the Mayor's New Year's resolution, and it's from Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you for your question. I'll start 2024 with a renewed resolve to continue leading a City Hall that puts Londoners first and works for their priorities. London deserves a Mayor who seeks to unite our diverse communities, that has a track record of delivering the highest ever levels of affordable housing, that has increased opportunities for our young people, and who cares about our environment and the air we breathe. I'm immensely proud of what we've achieved in City Hall in 2023, and in each year, in fact, since 2016. In March, we surpassed our council house building target by supporting London boroughs to build over 23,000 new council homes since 2018, the highest rate since the 1970s. We also beat the ambitious target the government set in 2016 to start 116,000 affordable homes by March 2023. Meanwhile, the government failed to meet their own affordable housing targets for 2016 to 2023, falling short by 6,500 homes outside London. We've cut toxic air in central London by a half and in inner London by a fifth, thanks to policies like the ULEZ. And now 9 million people breathe cleaner air thanks to the recent expansion. I'm also proud to have invested record amounts in neighbourhood police and getting 1,300 more bobbies on the beat, and this year funding 500 additional PCSOs. We've also created positive opportunities for over 150,000 young people, helping them forge a path outside the criminal justice system. This year, despite opposition from some on the Assembly, we've ensured that every state primary school child gets a free, nutritious meal every day at school for the first time in the history of our city. This will save the average family £440 per child per year, and will mean some of our most vulnerable children will be able to concentrate in class rather than go hungry. We've also helped create over 330,000 jobs from City Hall since 2016, helped hundreds of thousands of Londoners attend a free college course to help them into the job market, completed the Elizabeth Line with more than 270 million journeys since opening at a rate of 4.3 million a week, and we're on track to provide 100,000 young people with a personal mentor by the end of 2024. There is, of course, much more to do, and I remain honoured to have the opportunity to lead this great city. Ultimately, my New Year's resolution is to continue working daily, day and night, to make London safer, greener, fairer and more prosperous.
Thank you, Mayor Khan. Thank you for that. You touched on policing, and I'm sure you want knife crime to be reduced. How much has knife crime increased under your mayoralty? Do you know?
We've got figures which we've published for the reduction in knife crime injury for those below the age of 25. I can share them again, Chair, after Mayor's question time.
No, that's okay. I've done my homework, and it's gone up nearly 50%. So I'm just wondering how you think you're going to bring it down next year. And I'm talking across the age groups. How are you going to bring down knife crime? For it to go up nearly 50% under your mayoralty is quite disgraceful.
Well, so, Chair, for knife crime for those below the age of 25, the reduction since 2016 has been significant. So since the VIU was set up, it's gone down by 15% knife injury for those below the age of 25. Compared to pre-pandemic, it's gone down by 11%. And since I became mayor, it's gone down as well. We're going to continue making progress on this. And one of the ways we're going to do this is not just by investing in the police, but by investing in services for young people as well. The VRU has provided positive opportunities for more than 150,000 young people, and we're now providing mentors to more than 100,000 young people by the end of next year as well. That makes a big difference in dealing with the root causes of knife crime for those below age 25.
Clearly you and I disagree on the figures. It's actually 48.8%. So the other thing, one of the other things that you're going to obviously concentrate on is sexual offences. They've gone up under your mayoralty by 50% or 49.3%. So do you think Londoners deserve better than that from their police and crime commissioner?
So, Chair, unfortunately, we've seen across the country an epidemic of violence against women.
No, let's concentrate on London, because that's what you're responsible for.
So, Chair, unfortunately, we've seen in the recent past across the country an epidemic of violence.
Let's concentrate on London, because it's London that you are responsible
Assembly
for.
Member Hall,
I'm just reminding him, Chair, that he's responsible for London.
The Mayor has to have the right to reply.
So, Chair, unfortunately, we've seen over the recent years an epidemic of violence against women and girls across the country. And that's not escaped our great city as well. It's made incredibly difficult by the fact that we're now seeing cases listed for sexual offences for 2025 and 2026, and that often leads to high levels of attrition, with victims and survivors not going through, for understandable and good reasons, with the criminal case. What we're seeking to do is to not just encourage people to report when they've been the victim of sexual offences, but also to make sure that there are resources given by the government to not just the police, the CPS and the courts to make sure these trials reach their end. At the same time, we're investing more than £117 million in addressing the issue of violence against women and girls, both enforcement, with the work the new Commissioner is doing with the predatory units, targeting the 100 most prolific offenders, but also making sure that there are the resources given to the IDFAs and the ISFAs. In the prevention side...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you. No, it's just that you do go on exceptionally long and you don't actually answer the questions. It would be awfully helpful if you did, because you know we're on the clock here. So do you know how many people have been murdered under your mayoralty? And I want to know in London. If you don't know that, I'll tell you. It's 994. So if you've done such a good job, because you keep giving stats on how much money you've put in, very often you seem to think by putting money into things that will solve the issues. Well, quite clearly it doesn't, because we're looking again, knife crimes increased by 50%, sexual offences have increased by around 50%, and 994 people have been murdered while you have been the Mayor of London. Do you think that's acceptable?
So, Chair, we've seen since 2012, 2013, a huge increase in serious violence. That includes homicide across the country, including London. One of the explanations is austerity, without in any way excusing criminality. One of the reasons from City Hall we've invested record sums in the police and in youth services is to take action on the complex causes of crime, including homicide. Since 2016, when I became mayor. We've seen a reduction in homicides. Last year, for example, a 20% reduction in homicides to the year when I first became mayor, a 50% reduction in teenage homicides in the year I first became mayor. But Chair, one homicide is one too many, both as a Member of Parliament and as the mayor. I've spent too many hours with bereaved families, and what they wouldn't like is this being used as a political football. Instead, what they'd like is politicians understanding the complex causes, seeking to address them, as well as supporting our police.
Mr. Mayor.
And we've seen, Chair.
Mr. Mayor, you should keep your answers much shorter so that we can get on. You're talking about extra recruitment targets.
No, that is
Well,
that's a reasonable request from Assembly Member Hall to keep your replies succinct.
He's just counting down the time. We know what he's doing, don't we, Chair? Everybody on this side actually knows what he's doing. You talked about recruiting police numbers. So why does the MOPAC budget say that you're only planning to recruit 500 officers next year and will fall over 1,000 officers short of the 35,415 target?
So, Chair, what we're seeing in London across a number of sectors, including the Met, the NHS, social care, construction and hospitality, is vacancies in record sums across all these sectors. What the Commissioner sought to do is to persuade the government to increase the remuneration that police officers receive to encourage better recruitment in the police service, at the same time as increase the amount of civilian staff to avoid police officer time being spent doing back office functions. So far, he's been unsuccessful in persuading the government to give us those resources that we need. But in London, we're seeing a number of sectors with massive vacancies. The NHS, for example, has got a record number of vacancies.
Can I?
And social care.
I'm not talking about the NHS. I'm actually talking about police numbers. And let's not forget that you had to give back a vast sum of money to the government because you couldn't recruit. So we're size.
So, Chair, the decision to expand the ULEZ throughout London was a difficult one, but it's the right thing to do. I think just like drinking clean water is a right, I think breathing clean air is a right. The good news is, as a consequence of our scrappage scheme, which had no support from the government, 19 out of 20 cars seen driving in outer London, central London and inner London are now compliant, which means they don't pay a penny but get the benefits of cleaner air. But also we've improved public transport in outer London, giving people options if that's the case. And I still encourage those Londoners with a non-compliant vehicle to apply to the scrappage scheme. There's still plenty of money left in the scrappage scheme.
Well, I think for time reasons I'm going to have to stop at this, but all I know is £12.50 for driving their cars for people that cannot afford to replace them, and then they see the tax hike that you're putting up for their taxes next year. I think it's disgraceful. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Russell.
Thank you, Chair. As my New Year resolution for City Hall, I think we can all agree that the office of the Mayor of London should not be for sale in the new year. Now, I made public earlier this week that United Airlines secured free publicity and final sign-off on City Hall materials in exchange for business class flights for your trip to the United States in May 2022. Now, Mr. Mayor, it sounds like this may have been a one-off error of judgment, but the months-long delay in responding to our questions is worrying to me and frankly disrespectful to Londoners. So can you inform the Assembly of any other instances where a similar agreement with any other corporation has been made?
I'm not aware of any, but I'm more than happy for my Chief of Staff to respond accordingly.
Thank you. I appreciate your answer, Mr. Mayor, and I hope we won't find anything to contradict that a year from now. Thank you, Chair.
I think, Assembly Member, the point of your intervention there was the timeliness of the reply, and so I think the Mayor possibly needs to take that on board as the timeliness of his response to your question. Thank you. Assembly Member...
Point of order. Chair. Sorry, there's an underlying issue that actually there's an accusation there that the mayor has sold something or bought himself something. Surely that's an issue. If you think you've got, or if a member around this table has got information that that's the case, then it should be reported to the monitoring officer.
Assembly Member Duval, I didn't pick that up from what the Assembly Member had said.
Can I make a point of personal explanation?
Of course, yes, you're allowed.
It has been reported to the monitoring officer, and the monitoring officer has today come back and said that there is not a case to answer, but there is still an issue, Assembly Member Duval, about the not reporting it, and that part of the complaint was resolved informally, and a declaration has been made by the mayor of this agreement that should have been reported beforehand.
I think I think both sides should be happy out of that. No accusation has been made, as far as I can see. Assembly Member Polanski, please. I beg your pardon. Assembly Member Duval, was it still on the point of order? Was it still on the point of order?
No, Chair. You were calling. I think you were. I think you've got me on a list.
Yes,
on the list.
After Assembly Member Polanski. Assembly Member Polanski.
Thank you, Chair. On New Year's resolutions, what will be your relationship, or the nature of your relationship with United Airlines in the future?
Well, I will carry on supporting trade with the United States of America, and I'm really proud that no other global city has bounced back the way we have. We saw in the pandemic tourists not coming to London. We saw a reduction of foreign direct investment, and I'm really proud that United, along with a number of other airlines, have increased the number of flights between London and America. I think at the time of my trip, United had a record 22 flights going from Heathrow to America, and it's really important that we encourage trade to our city. It's important we encourage students to our city. It's important we encourage foreign direct investment to our city. I'm going to carry on encouraging business, trade, student visits, family visits from other parts of the world, including America, to London.
It's concerning that the greenest mayor ever is talking about business as usual. You also signed an agreement that said no materials will be used concerning United disparage or reflect unfavourably on United. Did this agreement expire when your trip finished in May 2022, or as far as you're concerned, is this agreement still ongoing?
There's nothing in any agreement that dictates what I say or do, but I will speak proudly and proactively about American businesses or British businesses that do good by London. It's really important that we
Is that why you read out loud to me in this chamber just a few months ago United Airlines Sustainable Aviation Fuel press release when I asked you about this?
There is nothing that I read out that I'm paid to read out, and I think Zach, if you reflect on what you're asserting and alleging, when the meeting finishes, I know you're going to regret that, but I think it's very careful.
Well, last time you told me to reflect on what I'd said about United Airlines, but it seems a coincidence that just a year earlier you'd had thousands of pounds worth of free flights and then defended United Airlines in this chamber, not once, but twice, but multiple times. Can you see how that looks?
Well, let's be clear. It's just been ascertained by the questions from Len Duval, not Caroline Russell, that a complaint was made to the monitoring officer, and Caroline Russell has just said it was knocked back. So I think you'll be a bit careful in relation to throwing allegations around. I'm quite
This
clear,
is about
Chair.
transparency, Mr. Mayor, and the fact it wasn't declared.
I'm very proud to promote American businesses that create jobs, wealth and prosperity in London. I'm very proud to promote businesses from any part of the world that promote jobs, wealth and prosperity in London, just like I'm willing to stand up to those businesses that are not good for London, whether it's Madison Square Gardens or whether in previous years, whether it's...
Is this why you called, and I quote, United Airlines one of the world's leading airlines? In this chamber, you said one of the world's leading airlines. That sounds like product placement, Mr. Mayor.
Chair, I think we've got to realise there are a number of great airlines that work in London. Look, the member for the Green member doesn't believe in flying. I respect that point of view. I respect the point of view that he wants the airports in London to close down. I don't agree with him.
I want supposedly the greenest mayor ever to stop promoting aviation and to not take thousands of pounds worth of free flights.
The mayor must be allowed to reply.
Chair. It's fine.
Chair, it's really important that when these accusations are thrown around, they're responded to. And I will not apologise at all for banging the drum for our great city, for promoting jobs, wealth and prosperity, and for amplifying businesses that do right by London. Now, I'm sorry, the Green Party are against jobs, against growth, and against any form of flying. I'm not.
I've talked frequently about a just transition, but you are not banging the drum for London, Mr. Mayor. You are banging the drum for United Airlines. And I think Londoners expect better from the greenest mayor ever. Thank you, Chair. No further questions.
I am aware that everybody wants to get the last word, but we're going to go over to Assembly Member Duval.
Thank you, Chair. Talking of New Year resolutions, will you resolve to continue to lobby the government to provide proper funding for London, rather than relying on increased council tax in order to support vital public services, which are all facing unprecedented pressures?
Well, you've seen the response this week from cross-party London councils. That includes Labour, Lib Dem and Conservative, unfortunately not Green, expressing concern in relation to what the government's requiring councils to do, and by the way, GLA as well, and it's cost shunting. So what the government has done is they've reduced the amount of monies that councils and the GLA receive when you compare and contrast inflation, and requiring councils and the GLA to fill this massive black hole, partially by increasing a regressive tax, which is council tax. And that's why you'll be seeing across London and across the country regional authorities and local councils having to increase their council tax to the maximum allowed. But by the way, this will not fill the massive hole left by central government cuts. I'll give you one example. London councils, cross-party, Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem, said to the government, we need around 9% increase in budgets just to make ends meet. The government's not giving that. They're giving around half of that, which will mean big problems for councils across the city and the country, which you'll see more councils either having to cut services in big ways or going bankrupt.
Now, in terms of the Met's national policing responsibilities, which are not fully funded by government, I mean, that's been estimated by something like 240 million. Can you just outline what actions you've recently been taking? I've been following the Met Commissioner's letter to government asking them to give that fairer funding so it can be spent on the issues that was raised earlier by the members, in addition to what we're already spending. Can you just outline what those activities are?
So it's really important. When Londoners elect a mayor, they want he or she to be a champion for our city and not be in the pocket of central government and stating the facts. So the facts are, since 2010, London, the Met Police Service has lost more than £1.1 billion from central government. These are cuts from central government over the last 13 years. We can't escape that. On top of that, we're receiving, roughly speaking, £240 million less than what we should receive as a national and international capital city. That means tough choices for the Commissioner, the police and myself to make. The good news is, unlike the previous mayor who refused to support the police with a tool he did have, a mechanism he did have, which is council tax precept, I've been supporting the police with the maximum amount of funding I'm allowed to do, the council tax precept. Additionally, I've used business rates money to support our police. That has led to 1,300 more police officers, but also funding things like 500 more police community support officers and other things the police desperately need, from tasers to the kit, to support in relation to police cars, police vehicles and so forth. But what the Commissioner sought to do over the last few weeks, and I know Caroline wasn't happy with the examples he gave, he's trying to explain the consequences of these massive cuts, which is rationing a finite resource, which means priorities.
And isn't one of the consequences of policing any protest? I don't pick and choose protests we have to police and how they should be policed. That's operational matters. I expect them to be policed fairly and appropriately, and people that fall outside the law should be taken to task. But the realities of that is actually while the police are sorting out these protests, they're not doing the job on the ground in the boroughs that I represent and everybody else represents around this table, isn't it? The consequences are, in terms of policing priorities, if you're there in central London policing a demonstration because of our capital city and the focus of that, those issues, because that's what protesters want, we can't have police officers doing the stuff that actually Assembly member earlier on highlighted in her questions about some of those policing responsibilities.
No, I think successive governments have realised that you should be able to police protests, sporting events, cultural events, state visits and police communities. That's why you have a national and international capital city grants. This affects London more than any other part of the country. The problem is this government's not just cut resources for community policing, £1.1 billion. They've cut money for national, international capital cities policing, £240 million. So you're seeing in areas like Greenwich that you live in and represent, but other parts of our city, officers are being abstracted from those communities because they've got to police these protests and so forth for obvious reasons. And that's a huge source of frustration to me, to Londoners, to the Commissioner, and that's why it's incredibly disappointing that the new Home Secretary doesn't appear to understand the complexities of this, or to be arguing the Home Office's corner. What you want from a Secretary of State is to be arguing with the Treasury for more resources for his or her department, just like you want a mayor arguing for our city. And if we're not careful, we could end up with a mayor that's in the pocket of a Secretary of State or a government who's not willing to argue for our city.
And then finally, let's move to transport, Mr Mayor, in terms of some of the issues. But do you think it's a bit rich of the people that oppose you and oppose the work that you did on ULEZ, talking about the scrappage scheme, when government doesn't give any penny or contribute to the scrappage scheme, or even attempt to support people living outside London entering into London? No attempt at all by government. Does that not really stick in your throat, really?
Well, I think the hypocrisy is clear for everyone to see. People in Bristol, Birmingham, Portsmouth, and those just outside those fantastic cities getting support from central government. People in London and outside London getting diddly squat from this government. Another example of the most anti-London government we've ever seen. But also, again, do you think they're more likely to give us more resources if you're in their pocket, or if you're arguing and lobbying the government for more resources? I'm going to carry on arguing and lobbying for more resources for our city.
But what if you're not arguing for those resources for Londoners? What if you're selling Londoners short, not just that by central government, being sold central short, like the fifth column inside here in the London Assembly, who are silent in speaking up for Londoners, even when there is a fair case put forward for extra resources for London, they don't support it, which leads me to believe that there is a cut strategy here. There's a cut strategy that they're quite happy to see reduced resources on public expenditure. Do you think that's correct?
I think what you've seen this week is a case study in what could happen if we're not careful. What do I mean by that? The government decided to cut funding for a high-speed 2 station at Euston. They said the £6.5 billion that was going to go into that is instead going to be spent across London. That's what they said, £6.5 billion. Yesterday, you had some celebrating us receiving not £6.5 billion, but over 10 years, £200 million. And by the way, we as a city give to the government more than £500 million in road tax every year. There are some who'd be cheering that, because as you said, the government wants somebody inside City Hall to be their shop steward. I think it's outrageous. I think they're taking Londoners and London for a fool.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you. Diddly squat, £21 billion budget. I hardly would call that diddly squat. And we look at just yesterday, and you got 235 million from Mark Harper, our boroughs did, and thank goodness they're giving it mainly to the boroughs, because it can't be squandered by you. But all I would say to you, Mr Mayor, is that anybody that regards a budget of £21 billion as diddly squat really has no understanding at all of money. Thank you, Chair.
Well, Chair, let me respond to that question, which I know as an impartial Chair you'll allow me to do.
There needs to be a question, yeah.
So the government takes every year from London, £500 million in road tax. £500 million in road tax. Over 10 years, that comes to £5 billion. They're giving us back not £5 billion, they're giving us back just over £200 million. The government has cancelled its contribution towards High Speed 2 Euston Station, £6.5 billion. They're not giving us back £6.5 billion, they're giving us back just over £200 million. And so we are receiving a fraction of the money the government's taken away from us. Some will accept that with a smile and a photograph. Others will say that's wrong. And I think Londoners are with me rather than her.
Well, I think you're absolutely wrong there. If you look at the bailouts, if you look at the extra money coming in everywhere, if you look at the list goes on and on. I haven't got the time to sit like you do and just reel off loads of money. But diddly squat is not what you get. You get an awful lot of money from lots of... And can you stop interrupting? It's very rude.
Can I?
I think that you get a lot of money, and I would not call it diddly squat.
Can I emphasise to members that this is Mayor's question time? We ask questions of the Mayor, and, you know, that's its main purpose. Next, let's go on and talk about London's black taxis, and that's Assembly Member Pidgeon.
Thanks for your question. The taxi trade has a rich history in London, and I'm confident it will continue to play an important role in the city's future. London's taxis and their drivers are the envy of the world, with their instantly recognisable vehicles and their drivers' unparalleled ability to navigate our complex city. We're rightly proud of black taxis' heritage, but this is also a trade that innovates. Black cabs are early adopters of zero-emission capable technology. Over half of all taxis are now zero-emission capable, helping to clean up the air in the capital. Along with Transport for London, I've provided £50 million of funding to encourage continued uptake. As I set out in my transport strategy, taxis provide an accessible, door-to-door service for Londoners and visitors alike. They have a vital role to play in London's transport mix, catering for some of those trips that can't be taken on foot, by cycle or using public transport. That's why we've done so much to support the trade in London. On top of the £50 million zero-emission capable transition fund, we've given black cabs access to 95% of bus lanes on TfL roads, which now operate 24/7, exempted them from the congestion charge and the ULEZ, increased the number of taxi ranks in London by around 100 to a total of over 600, and added taxi information such as nearby ranks to the TfL journey planner. I'm proud that the entire fleet are designated wheelchair accessible vehicles and have a range of accessibility features, all taxis except card and contactless payment. Following recent conversations my Deputy Mayor and TfL have had with taxi stakeholders, I've asked TfL to work with the industry to create a new vision for taxis that will clearly set out the role taxis will play in London's future. I'm aware that there has been a reduction in people applying to become taxi drivers, which was exacerbated during the pandemic. In collaboration with taxi driver representatives, TfL has been making changes to the knowledge of London to modernise and speed up the training process without diluting the gold standard attained by London's taxi drivers. Even before these changes had been introduced, we've seen an increase in the number of people applying to become taxi drivers this year. I understand that following a very challenging time during the pandemic, demand for taxi services is now on the rise again.
Lovely, thank you very much. And as you mentioned in your press release of 6th of December, you celebrate that over 50% of black taxis are now zero-emission capable. And at face value, that is really good news. But the cost of these new taxis is over £70,000, with finance offered at a staggering 9% interest rate, making them cost nearer £100,000. And with only one vehicle that's currently licensed, there is no competition. So these new black taxis are increasingly becoming unaffordable. If you add to that the plug-in vehicle grant from central government, which has provided £7,500 towards a new taxi, is about to end next year, what are you doing to make new taxis affordable for black taxi drivers and fleet owners in the capital? And are you considering adding your own grant into this?
No, thanks for your question, and thanks for your assiduous championing of this really important industry. As part of the work around the new vision we want to create for this industry, we are looking at what more we can do. You mentioned the fact that only one manufacturer is making new taxis. There used to be 3, for understandable reasons, that the number of vehicles sold is limited, so you can understand why no new manufacturer would invest. The same challenge we have with double-decker buses. There's a limited market, and so it's difficult to get new people in there. But we are looking at what more we can do to reduce costs. You mentioned the consequence of finance that's, even if you're saving fuel bills, that is a big monthly outgoing in relation to your payments. So, the Commissioner, the Deputy Mayor are seized of this, and they're working with industry representatives to see what they can do. And, by the way, manufacturers, and that includes those who retrofit as well.
Good. I think it's really important, and also looking at that plug-in vehicle grant, which is only guaranteed until the end of March, and that really helps try to plug some of this financial gap. Now, I'm really pleased you've mentioned you're looking at a new vision. I met with the Deputy Mayor and others recently, but your last plan was 2016, and actually, that was aimed at driving up standards, boosting the quality of service and protecting the future of our iconic black cabs. A lot's happened in those 7 years, and actually you read it, it feels like a historic document, to be honest. Are we going to expect from this vision a new detailed action plan?
I think yes. I think also, not just the pandemic, but we've looked around the globe, and if you look around the globe, I'm afraid a lot of the global cities have seen a reduction in taxi usage, and we can both hypothesize why that is. And so it's learning from those cities that haven't seen a reduction. I mean, New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Dubai, and other cities have all seen a big decline in taxi trips. We're going to learn what happened there to see if we can avoid those. The app is an issue with private hire vehicles, but also see where you've not seen a reduction, see what we can do to try and increase this. But you're right. We've either got to make it attractive, or you're going to see the progress we've made in the last year with an increase go down very, very quickly. The good news, by the way, is we've seen a big increase in black, Asian, multi-ethnic drivers doing the knowledge, which if you remember back when we first began this journey a few years ago, we weren't seeing that. So there are some areas for hope, but you're right. Unless we support this industry, the worry is going to be it'll go the way of the telephone box.
Yeah. Thank you. And obviously, demand is up, we hear that, but number of drivers are down, increasing cost pressures. People are sort of debating, can the black cab industry survive? Will you, as part of this new vision, look to host a round table with the taxi industry, including the various taxi apps and fleet owners, to help shape this new vision, this new strategy and action plan to help our iconic black taxi service continue to serve London? I mean,
absolutely. They've got to be, forgive the pun, in the cabin in relation to the work we do in relation to the new vision. We'll also be speaking to the manufacturers, speaking to those in the finance, speak to colleagues across the globe. Speak to those different ages. You'll be where also the big challenge we have is a number of our black cab drivers are getting older. Yeah. And the worry is when they retire, who's going to replace them? And so it's really important we don't have a big exodus in relation to them retiring as well.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I look forward to being part of that work as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly Member Desai is asked a question about drink spiking.
Thank you for your really important question as well. Everyone out in London deserves to be safe and to feel safe wherever they are in the capital and at any time of day or night. I'm working closely with my Night Tsar, the police and partners to make London's nighttime venues a no-go zone for perpetrators and those attempting to cause anyone harm. I'm pleased that the Home Office will amend the Criminal Justice Bill and update the Offences Against the Person Act 1861 to make it clear that spiking is illegal. We'll see what the legislation says, but I'm clear that spiking should be a specific offence, and I know that Assembly Desai has been calling for this for some time now, so congratulations. Any allegation of spiking is taken very seriously by the Met Police Service, who are committed to working to tackle this issue with our nighttime venues, many of which have received specialist training to recognise and help prevent these incidents. The Met Police Service has worked to improve their response to drink spiking through the rollout of Operation Rana. This operation deploys dedicated police officers to raise awareness about the signs that someone's drink has been spiked and to investigate reports of drink spiking. When an incident is reported, the police will record all information and gather critical evidence such as bottles or glasses. MPS licensing officers have distributed leaflets to raise awareness of this issue, and ahead of Christmas they have written to licensed businesses with advice on spiking and other safety issues. My Night Tsar has supported this work by promoting Operation Rana resources through an extensive network of venues across London. This includes highlighting Operation Rana resources through the regular newsletter that goes to the Nighttime Policy Forum, which includes boroughs and business improvement districts. I want to make it clear that it should not be down to women to protect themselves from the risk of their drink being spiked. I also recognise that a significant number of spiking victims are men, and it's completely unacceptable for anyone to be subjected to this appalling offence. More must be done to identify and arrest perpetrators of this predatory crime. I'm fully committed to supporting the new Met for London plan to overhaul the way the force deals with offences like these.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning. You answered both my supplementaries, but I think to put this question into some context, the number of recorded drink spiking offences has quadrupled over the past 5 years, from 497 in 2018 to 1,788 in 2023 to date. The figure for 2022 was 2,066. So it's clearly an issue of great concern. I think my first supplement is going to be about raising awareness. So again, maybe if we could consider some sort of social media campaign over the next few days. And my second supplement is going to be about the legislation. So as I understand it, the government announced its plans to update the language of existing legislation to make clear that drink spiking is illegal. I would actually say that the government should go further and make spiking a specific offence in its own right. What are your thoughts about this?
So Chair, thank you for your, both your questions. So across the country, I think the figure of those reporting their drinks being spiked is around 5,000 last year, 5,000. So it's a big issue across our country. And I think the government recognises that, as does the Shadow Home Secretary, which is why they're talking about this specific offence. My understanding is there'll be a specific offence, but that's why I said in my answer, let's look at the legislation, because there should be a specific offence for a variety of reasons. In relation to your second point about raising awareness, I agree with you completely. So I'll be supporting the Night Tsar, the Met Police Service, to raise awareness across the nighttime economy, working with those more than 2,000 who've signed the Women's Night Safety Charter, business improvement districts and others as well. But also I think we can all look out for each other as well when it comes to being in a bar or a nightclub as well.
Just to say, Mr. Mayor, that you sort of mentioned the figure of 5,000, a national figure. So that means that 2 out of every 5 offences, roughly, are actually in London, because the figures I quoted are from the Met and for London. So anyway, I commend you for you and the Nights for the work you're doing in this area. And can I take this opportunity to wish you a Merry Christmas and all the best for 2024.
Thank you. Assembly Member Sheikh, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your question. Since I first became Mayor in 2016, I've been committed to taking action to improve the safety of women in the capital. In June last year, following a series of terrible incidents of violence against women and girls, we published our refreshed Tackling Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. The refreshed strategy brings together MOPAC and the GLA with the VORG sector, Violence Against Women and Girls sector, local authorities, police, the Crown Prosecution Service, the National Probation Service and the National Health Service, working as equal partners across London to tackle these crimes. It sets out a wide range of actions we're taking in London to tackle perpetrators, support victims and survivors, and rebuild the confidence of women and girls in the police and justice system. The Women's Night Safety Charter has contributed to London's accreditation from the United Nations on the Women's Initiative, Safe Cities and Safe Public Spaces. By signing up to the Charter, businesses are committed to take action to improve safety for women, such as training their staff and how to spot and act against intimidation and harassment on their premises. We've invested £324,000 over 3 years to support the further development and expansion of the Women's Night Safety Charter. This includes further increasing the number of Women's Night Safety Charter signatories, supporting businesses to implement the Charter and its pledge through a programme of training and resources making a positive impact on women's experience of London at night, encouraging the network for signatories to share best practice and ideas that make London safer for women as demonstrated through the highly successful Women's Night Safety Summits, and ensuring signatories have access to other pan-London training opportunities such as active bystander training and Ask for Angela scheme. Last month, I announced that all of London's Premier League clubs and high street giants like Tesco and Boots have signed up. Over 2,100 venues, businesses and organisations are now signatories to the Charter. We've also seen other cities and regions following our lead, adopting our model as an example of best practice. I encourage all organisations that operate at night to sign up and show their commitment to making London's spaces and places safer for women at night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning to you and wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas. Thank you for that answer, and I agree. I think one thing I really appreciate, it's more than sometimes actions, but it's also about tone, and I think you really set the tone from the top when it comes to making this an issue that Londoners should be keeping alert around. I think the Have a Word campaign was a really important part of changing that culture where, beyond bystanders, men kind of put themselves in the conversation around how you change a culture where women's safety needs to be prioritised. So regarding the Night Safety Charter, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about what we can continue to do to not just get organisations to sign up to it, but to ensure that it's actually having the effect that it's set out to do. And I wonder whether part of that is the after people leave work, what happens then? Making sure women get home safely. What can employers do after women leave their premises to ensure, even just checking in with them? Have you got a route home? Have you got a friend to text on the way? Is someone else expecting you at the other end? Anything like that we can do to kind of continue bulking up the charter?
I mean, you mentioned the word culture at the start of your question. I think it's really important for people who've got no experience of what women and girls go through to understand that. And I'm talking about men and boys. And we represent half the population of our city. And often, we don't know some of the challenges women go through and girls go through, from self-imposed curfews to the clothes you wear, to the footwear you wear, to the routes you take home, and so forth. And so being cognizant, being aware, affects how you treat your employees, how you treat your colleagues, your friends, and so forth. So, a simple example, having 4G and 5G on the Elizabeth Line, the Underground, means that people who want to keep in touch with their loved ones can do so. I'm at so-and-so station, I'll be home at 20 minutes, or whatever it is. Or you want to report something as well. And you're right in relation to the design of the public realm, the journey from work to home, particularly in these autumn, winter months. We're speaking to councils, TfL and others about designing the public realm in a way so more places are well lit. So you think about when it comes to planting bushes, is it inadvertently leading to a place where somebody can hide? Or weapons can be hidden. So it's being aware when it comes to the design phase about some of these challenges that can, have unintended consequences that are negative. At the same time, we've got to make sure that those, you're right, that may have signed up to the charter are properly trained, have the resources and so forth. And Amy LeMay, Justine, Sophie and myself will make sure that happens.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to picking up conversations with yourself and Amy LeMay on this. And I think you're right about that. It's about the now, but the long-term thinking of designing the public realm to ensure that actually women's safety is part of the framing that we use when we think about planning. And indeed, I've had a lot of feedback as well about having Wi-Fi and access to, on the lines and certain stations being a really key part of making sure people feel safe on the way home. So thank you for the work that you do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and apologies to Assembly Member Sheikh for not introducing your item as I usually do. I've got a thick cold.
Not a problem, Chair.
I've got a
it's the end of the year.
I've got a cold. The next item concerns the Mayor's areas of responsibility, and that's in the name of Assembly Member Fortune.
Thanks for your question. All my relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests and positions are disclosed on my register of interests, which is online and can be viewed by any member of the public. I've been the most transparent mayor ever, and our commitment goes well beyond the mandatory local government transparency code. We publish interests, gifts, hospitality and expenses for me, the mayoral advisors and the senior Greater London Authority officers. I publish my personal tax returns. My own register of interest is updated regularly. The register shows that I'm lucky enough with my wife to own a home in London that meets mine and my family's needs with the help of a mortgage. I grew up in a council home and I've never forgotten the support that provided for my family. That's why council home building is so important to me, starting over 23,000 council homes since 2018 and meeting our target for 116,000 affordable homes in London since 2016. The register also shows that I'm chair of TfL. Under my leadership, we were able to freeze fares for 5 years, introduce the Hopper fare, complete the Elizabeth Line, which is one of the most popular railway lines in the country, with over 4.3 million journeys per week, and introduce the new Superloop Outer London Express bus service. The register shows that I'm also chair of the Adult Education Mayoral Budget, which oversees the adult education budget. Since being devolved to London in 2018, the adult education budget supports around 200,000 learners a year, helping them upskill themselves for the job market. I'm also proud to chair the London Partnership Board. This is a forum born out of the collaborative working between all of London's leaders during the pandemic. It brings together leaders from business, the third sector, functional bodies and local government to build consensus on tackling the biggest issues London faces today. They did a fantastic job during the pandemic, which kept our city going and no doubt saved lives. I'm also proud to be a member of several trade unions. Trade unions were invaluable during the pandemic. The trade union movement was integral to fighting for the working conditions we all now take for granted, conditions like paid leave, sick leave, maternity leave, health and safety standards and more. And I've continued that mission with my Good Work for All standard, which now has 140 employers signed up, giving more than 250,000 people better working conditions. I hold many other positions. They're all listed online for complete transparency.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you think I was going to an area I'm not going to. I'm from a council estate too. I recognise hard work. So the stuff that's on the register of interest here in terms of your chair positions, why I was keen to know that is just to establish the areas of responsibility that you have, direct areas of responsibility. What's your position with the C40s?
I'm chair of C40.
Oh, that's not on here. So you probably want to update that.
Sorry?
That's not on your register of interest. So you probably want to update that. So the reason I'm asking about these, so the areas of responsibility that are on here: Mayor of London, Chair of TfL, Co-Chair of Crossrail, Chair of London Crime Reduction Board, Chair of London Health Board, Chair of London Economic Action Partnership, Chair of the Mayor's Business Advisory Board, Chair of the Adult Education Mayoral Board, Co-Chair of London Partnership Board, Trustee Resolving Doors, which is on here as well. The C40's co-chairmanship, which is not on here, but you can update that. I mean, there's a lot of areas of responsibility that I want to ask you about, so I want to pick one. I noticed Howard's here. Oh, he's gone. Who's the new Deputy Mayor for Business. So I figured, of all those areas of responsibility, I'll loop back onto business. You remember that I asked you previously about small business payments and making sure that small business payments were going promptly and on time from the GLA. Can you remember what the target is to get them paid on time?
I'm sorry, I can't. It's not. I can't. Sorry.
It's 90%. In 2018 and 19. There were 1,280 invoices paid late. That was 13.5 million that should have gone to small businesses on time but didn't. 1920, 1,242 late payments. That's 12.4 million. That should have gone on time and didn't. In 2021, when I asked you about it, you said you'd fix it, and that was great. That was a great commitment. I came back to ask you about it again in June 2022, at which point it was only 84% of payments on time, so that had missed the target again. When I asked you last time, that had reduced to 79%. And you said, OK, I'm going to grip this. Let's have a meeting. So we did. We had a meeting. That was good. There was no coffee, but that's fine. And you said you were going to grip it. What is it now? Do you know?
I mean, I would have got the answer had I been asked a question. I don't know the answer. I'm more than happy to find out the answer and get back to you.
So in period 7, it was down to 72%. And in period 8, it was down to 77%. So the reason I ask about this and the reason I asked about the areas of responsibility is, understandably, this is a complex environment. But this is something that you've got control of, that I've asked you about over and over again for a couple of years. This is something that you've got control of. You sign the cheques, and this is money going from here to small businesses that are dependent on this cash flow. And you haven't gripped that area of responsibility. So you've got... There's all these things that you're responsible for, all these chairmanships you've got. You know, you're Sadiq Khan, the grand poobah of London, with all these areas of responsibility that you're not meeting. So can you give me a commitment now that you're going to grab this and you're going to hit this target? And if you want another meeting, because it was a shame you cancelled the meetings we had in the diary, I'm happy to facilitate that.
Well, Chair, simply don't have the information to answer the question, but I'm more than happy to go away and get the information and respond to the member this side of Christmas, if possible.
I've got it. So here it is. So, and I'll go back. So 2013-14, which fair enough was not your mayoralty, it was 93%, the target was hit. 14-15 wasn't your mayoralty, that was 93%, the target was hit. 15-16, which wasn't your mayoralty, 94%, the target was hit. 16-17, the first year of your mayoralty, it was down to 89%, then it was 82%, then it was 84%. 21-22, when I asked you for the first time, it was 79%. 22-23, it was 74%. Period 7, 72%. Period 8, 77%. So it's failing. So can you commit to me, as you did in 2021 and as you did in 2022 and as you did earlier in 2023, that you're going to take personal responsibility? Because you can do this, right? You're not dependent on government funding. You're not dependent on international action. This is your responsibility. Can you commit to hitting this target of 90%?
As I've already said, I'm more than happy to take this away and look into this. I simply haven't got the information that the member's referring to, but I'm happy to go away, find the information and respond to him.
You don't need the information. It's can you commit to hit the target?
Simply haven't got the information to respond to the points you're raising. I can go away, look at the issue and respond in relation to the points you're raising.
So the meeting that was cancelled, can we put that back in the diary? I'll bring coffee.
I'm more than happy to. I'm more than happy to.
Thank you very much.
Assembly Member Rogers, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr Mayor. Question for you in your capacity as Chair of TfL. Last week, the Port of London Authority, in partnership with the Thames Estuary Growth Board, published an interesting report recommending 3 electric ferry crossings in East London. Have you seen that report, and what do you make of those recommendations?
I've not seen the report, but I was briefed on it because we want to work with them in relation to support they need around the piers and I think it's really exciting. One of my frustrations, you'll be aware from the last 3 years, is we've got very little locus over the River Thames, but we'd like to get more involved. We have lots of convening powers, and we work closely with both the groups you've mentioned. Incredibly exciting. They'll need our support in relation to working with the councils and the peers, and we're really keen to help them.
Thank you. I mean, one of the proposals is for a ferry that connects Barking Riverside to Thamesmead, and I think given we had a Transport Committee meeting looking at the DLR, the cost of the Thamesmead extension is up to 1.1 billion. This ferry proposal is 10% of that. Do you recognise that as a potential solution for Thamesmead, which is a fairly poorly connected part of the city?
I was at a recent, the reason why I'm smiling is because it's like, I was at a recent Homes for Londoners board meeting where the same point was raised. It's like you've been asked to raise it again, but it's a really important issue you raise, because infrastructure frees up housing, and if we can make infrastructure cheaper, it's a no-brainer, and you're spot on. And by the way, if you get a chance, the Barking Riverside station has made a transformative change. I think 17,000 journeys a day. But you're spot on in relation to using the big asset, the river, to try and get even more people there as well. But also making it a destination point as well. And I'm more than happy to come back to you in relation to the work we're doing, working with colleagues that you've mentioned.
Thank you. That would be appreciated. Also, discussion of the river often tends to focus on central and eastern London, and for good reasons. The river is bigger, it's easier to use there. But I think my constituency of southwest London probably has more of the river in terms of mileage than any other part of London.
Chair, can I make a procedural point?
Chair of TfL relates to his role as chair of TfL.
Yeah, I'm just going to... So I understand, Chair, I think you're being very liberal in this definition, because so many of us also have other interests, and the way to bring this, if you want to bring this question forward, you should have set it as an individual question, or under New Year's resolution, where you could have tied it in. But I just think it's a dangerous precedent, because if you...
Sorry, the precedent was established under previous assemblies when catch-all questions have been asked by both parties, and they do form this. Now, I observe that the Mayor has used the same defence that previous mayors have used, which is, if you're not specific enough for me to go and get a briefing on, then I will have to defer it and reply. I know it's difficult, but I've got to allow those questions to be asked, because it was a catch-all question. If we want to change this in the future, if you want to put a bar on catch-all questions, I think that's something that's best taken in through the Bureau.
Chair, just to say, on this issue, I completely appreciate what you're saying. It's just that when Assemblymember Rogers started the questioning about the river, the first thing the Mayor did say was, we don't have any responsibilities over the river, just on the banks. And we've gone from the east end of the river now to talking about his constituents, and we're still talking about the river, over which our responsibilities, whether the Mayor has a pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest or whatever. So I think you really are stretching it now into areas that we're not responsible for, which is why we didn't say anything when...
Assemblymember, that's a fair point, and I would ask the member to pull it back to the Mayor's responsibilities, because that is the question. But that is a fair point.
Fine. I mean, as chair of TfL, I was approaching the end of my question anyway before that rather pointless interruption. But if you wouldn't mind writing to me with your views on how we would improve the use of the river for Londoners, that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, and you'll appreciate actually that it's one of our big untapped assets, and we've got to think about that. I go regularly down to Battersea Power Station, and that also has been transformed. You know it very well. I know it's not down the river from you, and we've got to. I think you're spot on in relation to using the river in a more innovative way. And so I'm happy to write to you about what we do.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I do love procedural wrangling. It's, you know, but no. I mean, I'm already in a bad mood. I mean, I've got an awful cold.
Chair, it's a season of goodwill. Come on, don't be Grinch.
I've got an awful cold. It's my wedding anniversary, and I forgot to buy a present.
Oh, no.
So actually, I'm not, I'm not that positive at the moment. Assemblymember Assembly Member Lord Bailey, please.
Good morning, Mayor. I want to
follow that.
I want to ask you about your responsibility around housing, which is, of course, one of your biggest responsibilities. As part of those responsibilities, you have a council house acquisition programme, and I want to start by asking you, is that programme focused on properties that are already vacant?
Chair, this is the last question. I don't know quite how we've got to there. There's one or two in between on the order paper.
This is.
Well, I've come in the back.
This is following on. This is a supplementary, following on from Assembly members' fortune. I do realise these questions are a challenge for the Assembly, and they always have been. But you know, as long as Assembly members address the original question, we're okay.
Yeah, one of these biggest. Please, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure that you and I can both agree that House. Thank you. So, please, Assemblymember Beck, I'm trying to question the Mayor. So, Mayor, could you just let me know if these purchases will be focused on houses that are already vacant?
Yes, if I could explain. So the Affordable Housing Programme's agreement with the government allows us to purchase 30%, up to 30% of homes that are new, so empty. Yeah. That allows us to purchase 10% of second-hand homes, and by definition, there's somebody selling their home, and they'll be vacant. There are other requirements, which basically it's got to be decent standards and so forth. But that's basically the way it works. So the 30% target empty because they're new. Developer sells them to us. The 10%, so not target, cap.
I understand, yeah.
The vendor is living there, sells it to us. Council, sells it to councils, beg your pardon.
So the reason I ask this question, because as this scheme will involve councils purchasing homes from the private sector, have you put any safeguards in place to make sure that tenants are not then made homeless?
That's a really important question. So first, just to reassure you, this is not new. And so the previous mayor, I think, purchased up to 16%, and across the country around 14%. So there are safeguards in place for the reasons you've said, because it's really important you don't inadvertently create homelessness to try and solve homelessness, because one of the reasons we're encouraging this use is to help with the temporary accommodation bill. And it would just be perverse if you're making people homeless indirectly by purchasing a home and adding to the temporary accommodation list. So I can reassure you that councils are cognizant of the perversity of that in relation to the vicious circle they have. And the reason why you can be reassured is councils are trying to reduce their temporary accommodation bill. They currently spend, roughly speaking, £720 million across our city a year. So what they wouldn't want to do is to add to it by creating another person to go on the TA list by being homeless.
Okay, and just a last point. There's almost 90,000 empty homes in London, which is a steep increase since you became mayor. What work is being done to try and bring those houses back into circulation? Because that strikes me to be quicker, it'd be cheaper, and you're less likely to be making people homeless or even have to confront that problem.
Yeah. Again, another good question. So one of the reasons for these empty homes is a lot of foreigners have bought our homes as gold bricks. And the way the business model worked for, I'm nothing against foreigners, but the way the building model works for these developers is they often sell off plan overseas. So a developer will go overseas.
I understand that.
And so these homes are built and they're left empty because they're still appreciating as an asset. So what we're trying to do is to persuade the government to give councils more powers to charge fees if a home is empty, to encourage that home to be brought back to use. What we can't do is CPO these homes.
Yeah, I understand that as well.
To do so. But any help you can give in the other place would be really appreciated in this area.
But are you actively pursuing, because there's been many landlords who actually, with a little bit of a nudge, would see it as an income and might do that. The golden bricks is one situation, but there's the suggestion that it's just people with a house sat by the mayor of inherited, etc. What are we doing to just say, look, you could give this to the council and get
good
an
councils
income?
are doing that. So what good councils do? Good councils are going to those homes and persuading. It could be probate to allow those to give the property to the council. Councils often give good 3-year deals. They guarantee income, so it's an income stream coming in. And so the good councils are definitely doing that. I can give you that assurance. I've seen examples of that myself. Good neighbours are not in a sort of inappropriate way reporting empty properties, so councils can take action. Often it's an empty property on top of a shop, which can be brought back
a bit out of sight. I'm going to stop for time, but could I ask that the GLA, if at all possible, either support councils or maybe look at doing something themselves, because the scale of empty homes is large and growing. Thank you, Mayor.
Assembly Member Garrett, please.
Look, so I'm sure in your capacity as Mayor and as Chair of TfL, you'll have seen the traffic problems, traffic chaos, people might say, the wall of buses in Streatham that's been causing all sorts of problems for people. Times reported that a bus that used to take 11 minutes to get through Streatham is now taking 45 minutes. And that's assuming that passengers manage to make it all the way through Streatham and that the bus isn't curtailed and they're all kicked off as the bus has to go back the other way because it's so far behind. What have you done to help those people who are caught up in all of those problems?
I spend quite a bit of time in Streatham for reasons you'll appreciate. I'm not aware of the challenges you're talking about occurring on a regular basis. I'm aware of the concern reported in the media about some residents' concerns around the LTNs. What the council is doing is responding to those concerns. We'll carry on working with councils in relation to those issues. As far as our operators are concerned and those bus drivers, TfL meets regularly with our operators, sometimes weekly. And it's not been an issue raised with TfL, but I can take it away if there are particular issues in relation to particular parts of Streatham. What TfL tries to do is help operators in relation to any problems that could be arising. The reason why it's important is, every minute a bus is delayed means that less likely a passenger will come back and use that bus. So it's in our interests to have buses moving quickly because it means more revenues for us.
So the report of buses taking 3-4 times longer, people just getting off and walking, buses being turned back, you're not aware of that happening?
I'm not aware of problems being caused by LTNs in Streatham on buses, no.
Okay, well, you mentioned LTN. I didn't mention LTN. I mentioned the traffic problems in Sutton. People may be blaming them on LTNs. That seems the likely cause, because as soon as the LTN went in, the problem seemed to appear. But as chair of TfL and as mayor of this great city, you're not aware of TfL buses on a TfL road driven by TfL drivers being so delayed that the buses are being curtailed and people can't make their journeys through Streatham?
No, as I said, I've seen media reports in relation to the delay you're talking about.
Sure, but what you would do, right? So let's imagine a world where, a responsible and, go-getting person is the mayor of this city. You see those media reports, think, this is awful. This is awful. I'm going to find out what's going on. So what did you do?
Well, for the children, they've got pantomime and mayor's question time all in one. So
So what did you do?
Two shares, very good.
What did you do, Mr. Mayor?
Chair, the Mayor is not responsible for Lambeth Council installing or not installing LTNs. Again,
really, Assembly Member Cooper, I agreed with you before. Now it's just an interruption for no point. Thank you.
So I notice, Mr. Mayor, that you're not wanting to answer my question, you're playing to the gallery. I noticed that the deputy leader of your group over there feels that she needs to come in as your sort of pedantic bodyguard who's trying to interrupt. What did you do as mayor of this city and as chair of TfL when you saw all these reports of people struggling to make journeys? What did you do?
Well, as I think I said a few minutes ago, what TfL do is they speak to the council.
What did you do?
What TfL do is they speak to the council, they speak to the operator and try and address any issues that are caused by any particular problem. I'm not aware of any systemic issues in relation to this, but I'm more than happy to go away and see if there is any particular systemic issue.
Okay, so you're not aware of what's going on in Streatham. I'm sure that'll be fairly unwelcome news to all of the people in Streatham who might have imagined that their plight had reached City Hall. Beyond Streatham, people across London are worried about possible delays in the new year, of course, from possible further strikes. Government has now given you powers to enforce minimum service levels. Is that a power that you welcome? Is it a power you intend to use?
So, TfL will always speak to trade unions to avoid any strike action. The legislation that you're referring to isn't fit for purpose for TfL in relation to safety requirements of TfL, but also in relation to the minimum standards requirement for TfL. But we're hoping it doesn't come to that because we're hoping that, as is often the case, we manage to resolve these things amicably.
So you won't be using those powers if there is a strike, another strike?
As I've said, we're hoping to avoid any industrial action, including strike action, and so TfL will carry on talking to RMT, I think is the trade union he's referring to try and avoid any strike action.
It's disappointing that you wouldn't use new powers given to you, though, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Now we move on to Assembly Member. Yeah, I've got you down. Yeah, and I've got both here. Assembly member. You can go. Actually, Assembly Member Duval. Wait, I'm just trying to.
This year you've managed to exceed your delivery targets on affordable housing despite challenging economic climate. London's also building more council homes than the rest of the country. The government, on the other hand, has missed their targets by several thousand. What do you intend to do in terms of the coming year? Is it more of the same, or are you going to raise your game even further by exceeding those targets in the coming years if you're able to?
Well, I was surprised. I'm not going to pretend, and I'm very rarely surprised by this government. Terry, Secretary of State, complaining about housing delivery in London, when the areas of the country for which he's responsible has failed to meet the targets he set them. So let's just remind ourselves, the targets set by government on us before Brexit, before the pandemic, before Putin's invasion of Ukraine, before the challenges we have with Liz Truss's kamikaze budget, we've met them. The target he set, Homes England, other parts of the country, have not been met, shy of about 7,000. We're building more council homes any time since the 1970s. We're completing more homes any time since the 1930s, yet playing party politics, because guess what? There's an election in 130 days' time in London, and one across the country later on next year. I think Londoners know from their experience the compare and contrast, and the danger Londoners need to address is, do they want happening to London what's happening to the rest of the country after May the 2nd? That's why I'm hoping they'll lend me their support May the 2nd.
And do you think, look, in some ways, do you think that this present government has lost their way, given where they were in failing to deliver on a promise to ban Section 21 no-fault evictions, that they side against the consumers time and time again? We see it not just in housing, we see it in other areas where they back the regulator, backing the owners of business rather than actually thinking around protecting the consumers. What do you think your role could be in speaking up for Londoners on that issue, as you've done in terms of defending Transport for London?
Let me give you 3 examples in housing where the government is on the side of vested interest. Unwilling to devolve powers around rent freezes and rent controls, because then they're on the side of landlords. Unwilling to remove Section 21 no-fault eviction, again on the side of vested interest. Unwilling to change the laws around leasehold on the side of developers who have these massive ground rents they charge on leaseholders and all the problems there. There are many other examples where the government's made the wrong choice. In relation to TfL, I think the government's going to be very careful, because we as a city contribute, and I'm very proud of this, almost £600 billion to the National Treasury. Almost £600 billion. We contribute, roughly speaking, 23% of GVA for the country. Now, what they should be doing is supporting us to contribute even more. Instead, what they're doing is, cutting their nose to spite their face, and that's why it's really important. London has a champion, advocate, fighter to make sure we can continue building on what we've done the last 7-8 years. But here's the real issue for next year. Just imagine what we could do with a pro-London government, which is possible after the next general election, pro-London mayor, pro-London government working together, rather than the show we've had for the last 7.5 years.
Thank you.
Assembly Member Prince, please.
Thank you, Chair. Season's greetings, Mr. Mayor, to you and your family. Unfortunately, on a more serious note, though, in your role as the Police and Crime Commissioner for London, could you please update the Assembly in relation to the actions you've taken and the Met took following the very worrying threat against a Muslim school in my constituency, Redbridge, please?
Thanks for raising this, Keith. It's a really important issue, I know, for people in Redbridge. The leader of the council and the local MP West Streatham have also raised this issue with the police. So you'll be aware, in my answer to a question from Caroline Russell, I alluded to the additional pressures on the police from hate crime. And for those colleagues that don't know, this was a school in the Assembly member's constituency which received a threat which led to children being scared, parents being scared to go to school, And it's a similar story across London with our Jewish schools as well. So, it's, I'm afraid both communities are suffering adversely. So the police do a number of things. Firstly, they have a really important role in reassurance. So having officers that are visible is really important. The head teacher's been incredibly responsible in this area as well. So parents have been encouraged to take their children to school. There are police officers around at the start of the day, at the end of the day. And the leader of the council and the local MP have been very good also at talking to the mosques as well. That's also a place where parents may go. But the reason why your question is so important is you all know the chilling effect it has on the rest of the community. So even though I'm not trivialising this, it's just one school, everyone from that community is affected across your patch, and that's why it's so important for you to raise it. And I want to reassure you that the police take it very, very seriously. Every time in recent weeks I've met with the police, one of the things they talk about and raise is their response to this issue. It really is a cause of concern. A new phrase I didn't understand before and wasn't used so much was the phrase is heightened fear. And what you're alluding to is also the consequence of this in relation to the heightened fear of your constituents.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Assembly Member Ahmad.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the issue about LTNs in Streatham, can I assure both the Mayor and the Assembly Member who raised the issue that this is absolutely a Lambeth Council issue, and I have gone into this as the Assembly Member for Lambeth and Southwark in depth with the relevant Cabinet officer member, and I have a pages of information for the Assembly Member that we can go through after this. But just to assure you, it is a council issue and it is being picked up. We are in a period at the moment where where objections are being noted. It is being monitored on an in-depth basis, and therefore it is something that has been picked up. So, Assembly Member Garrett, if you want to raise that. Well, as I say, it's a Lambeth Council issue that I have picked up on an in-depth basis. Thank you, Chair.
Was there a question, Chair?
Thank you. Lots of people haven't put questions today, and if I stopped every single one...
As long as we're all doing it.
Yeah. I would like to propose that the Assembly now adjourns for 10 minutes and return at 11:49 before continuing with the remaining business on the agenda. Are Assembly members in agreement?
Yeah.
The next question on the agenda concerns leasehold reforms and is being asked on this occasion by Assembly Member Cooper.
Thanks for your question. Yes, I'm incredibly disappointed by the government's delay to leasehold reform. Over a quarter of London's households live in leasehold properties, and improvements to the tenure are long overdue. What the government has presented to Parliament is much too little, much too late. The government's own research has estimated that 70% of leasehold homes are flats, and the vast majority of flats are sold on a leasehold basis. Excluding new flats from the bill therefore hugely undermines the government's proposed aim of reforming leasehold. England and Wales are the only places in the world still operating the feudal freeholder-leaseholder system. Many Londoners experience issues with their leasehold homes, such as high service charges, poor standards of management, and a lack of advice and information, particularly in relation to unreasonable charges and purchasing their freehold. I've championed London's leaseholders by calling for the wholesale reform of leasehold since I was elected as Mayor in 2016. I've outlined this in my London housing strategy, which calls for the government to introduce alternative tenures, such as common hold, and make better advice and support available for existing leaseholds. The levers at my disposal to improve leasehold pale in comparison compared to what the government would be able to achieve. But we've not waited for the government to take action before developing London's own initiatives to support fairer outcomes for leaseholders. We were ahead of the government in announcing that we would require 990-year leases as standard for shared ownership homes funded by City Hall. We've introduced a leasehold guide for Londoners that provides guidance to leaseholders to make sense of the current unfair and complicated system. We've also introduced the Service Charges Charter, which ensures our investment partners consider affordability when setting service charges and provide transparent information to the leaseholders. Enhancing an earlier version of the Charter from 2017, it aims to improve the situation leaseholders face in London by providing a set of best practice principles for housing providers to adopt when managing charges. I'll continue to lobby the government to reform leasehold and to ensure that reforms benefit existing as well as new leaseholders.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I was going to ask you about common hold because I think that's a massive gap in the bill, but you clearly agree with us that it's essential that it should have been included, and obviously that current leaseholders should be able to convert to common hold and that no new leasehold flats should be sold. I think there's a couple of other areas that the legislation is not very good on, and I just wondered if you could tell me what your thoughts are about the idea of, sounds a bit like the standing charge issue. There's a lot of landlords who've been jacking up the ground rent for absolutely no reason at all. Would you agree that it's an oversight that the bill has not covered the issue of going back to peppercorn ground rents, which is of course what they always used to be?
And our country is unique in that situation. It goes back to a question that Senator Duval asked about whose side are they on, and it appears they're on the side of vested interest, because you can imagine the challenges leaseholders have often challenging these exorbitant ground rents, but also you've now got to factor in not just your mortgage, but these charges, which can go up depending on the mood. Often it appears of the common holder and stuff. So it's a big opportunity missed. I'm hoping colleagues in the House of Lords and House of Commons make changes during the passage of the bill to improve it.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that that might be the case as well. There's another area that I think at the moment has been overlooked in the legislation, and obviously there's a lot of shared owners in London, and there's an argument, and of course it was very much a product that the previous Mayor of London pushed very hard. And so people both pay a mortgage on part of what they own, then they pay service charges, then they pay ground rent, and then they pay rent. And at the moment it's impossible for people to convert to extend their lease unless they actually staircase up to 100% of ownership, which a lot of people obviously, because prices are so high in London. Would you agree that we also need to be looking at the plight of shared owners in the bill as well?
I think you raise a really important point, because actually, look, a lot of people aspire to be homeowners, and often shared ownership is the only way they'll get a foot on the home ownership ladder. And they're not told about the problems they're going to have later on. So first, I think we're going to do more to make sure they know these issues. But secondly, you're spot on. Very rarely do you get a bill in the same area coming in subsequent years. This may be the only bill in this area for a number of years. And that's why it's an opportunity for colleagues in the House of Lords and House of Commons, and this isn't a party political issue, to think about using this opportunity to put clauses in that address the issues you're talking about.
No, I think it's very much not a party political issue, and I'm really hopeful that there will be people from all sides who will be making these amendments. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. The next question has been withdrawn, and so the question after that concerns tree removal by Assembly Member Devonish.
Thanks for your question. Trees and woodlands are critical to helping tackle the climate and ecological emergencies. Not only do they look beautiful, they also help protect London from flooding and overheating, improve air quality, and provide places for wildlife to thrive. They're an important part of London's cultural identity and urban landscape. Areas of higher deprivation tend to have fewer trees, and we're working hard to address this to enable all Londoners to have access to green space. In fact, 2 weeks ago I was proud to mark National Tree Week with Assemblymember Leonie Cooper by planting the 500,000th tree funded from City Hall since I became Mayor, a record since the mayoralty was established in 2000. Since 2016, we've invested almost £7 million into planting trees, including our dedicated £3.1 million Trees for London Fund. In the London Environment Strategy, we've committed to increase tree cover in London by 10% by 2050. We're supporting London boroughs to plant almost 3,000 street trees this winter, as well as giving away another 40,000 trees to Londoners in partnership with the London Conservation Volunteers I Dig Trees campaign. TfL carries out tree inspections throughout the year, including an annual tree inspection survey. Sometimes trees have to be removed due to an identified safety issue, a significant health concern, or new projects. Any decision to remove trees goes through a strict vetting process. Every year, TfL plants far more trees than it removes. Protecting our city's diversity and planting trees is a core part of my transport strategy, and I work closely with TfL to protect our city's biodiversity. TfL's estate has a large area of tree canopy cover, covering approximately 19% of its estate. TfL is increasing the number of street trees it manages, which is currently almost 25,000, and is on track to meet my transport strategy target of increasing street tree numbers by 1% per year until 2025. TfL has also included tree planting as part of its Healthy Street Check for designers. TfL's done excellent work through its Wildflower Verges programme, with the area covered due to double next year, and it's committed to delivering 5,000 square metres of catchment draining into sustainable drainage systems per year along its road network. TfL, like me, are committed to safeguarding trees so Londoners can continue to feel these benefits while also making sure our transport network remains safe.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Mayor.
And to you, thank you.
One of the terrible things about Christmas, actually, is the divorce rate goes up. I won't go off on a tangent, because I'll be told not to opposite. But the Greens and the Liberals seem to have divorced today, so I'm sorry about that. Anyway, on to my question. You'll be aware, Mr. Mayor, that on the Lambeth North Millbank roundabout there was, and I say was, past tense, a fantastic palm tree. Were you aware that Labour Party, Westminster City Council now, to stress, so you may be more positive in your answer, had designed a scheme that would have allowed the tree to remain where it was and make it safe for cyclists? And despite that, TfL still removed an amazing tree that's much loved by everybody in Millbank.
Well, Chair, I am aware of the scheme. Because that junction is, I think, the most dangerous junction for cycling in the city, requires the roundabout to be removed and for that road to be changed. There was a tree, a phoenix palm tree, in the centre of the roundabout, which is now going to be removed and actually planted somewhere else where it's more accessible and enjoyed by more people. I wasn't aware of a different scheme in relation to that junction, either on the north or south. That work's taken place. The phoenix palm tree has been replanted, and I'm told is doing very well.
If the palm tree dies in its new location, will you pay for another tree, please?
Well, TfL always replaces a tree if heaven forbid it dies, and I'm sure TfL will make sure the tree doesn't die and has a long and fruitful life. And if heaven forbid it wasn't to, I'm sure TfL would make sure a commensurate tree. Because what we don't want is a mature tree replaced by a sapling. And so if I was Senator Devonish, I'd ask for a like-for-like replacement, and I'm sure TfL would address that hypothetical case where, heaven forbid, the tree dies.
Well, as it's Christmas, I will leave it there. I don't want any United Airline tickets. Merry Christmas, Mr. Mayor.
I mean, the thing is, he spent all night thinking of that, all night, and that's the best he could come up with.
Assembly Member Cooper, please.
Could we have a Christmas tree then?
I'm sorry, Chair. Did I? No, I'm fine. I think Assembly Member Devonish has probably covered it. Well, maybe actually, Mr Mayor, talking about removing trees when we're looking at difficult situations like dangerous junctions, would you agree with me that it's always essential for TfL to make sure that they do approach these difficult decisions looking at it in the round? So they're considering SUDs, for example, in relation to their roads, the climate emergency, the urban heat island effect, and they take that into consideration and then do replanting if they are thinking of taking things out because of a dangerous junction?
Yeah, I mean, you raise really important points about opportunities that fixed injunctions provide in relation to issues to do with adaptations and resilience that our city is required to do. But just to reassure you and Senator Devonish, TfL does use tree specialists as well in relation to this endeavour. Sometimes it's not possible to make the improvements required without removing a tree. They are replanted wherever possible. But you're spot on about opportunities provided by catastrophes. That roundabout has had at least one fatality, dozens of people injured who are cyclists, and it must be right that we remedy that if it's possible, and it is on this occasion, to replace the tree. That's all and good. At the same time, as you've mentioned, sustainable urban drainage, issues to do with adaptations and resilience are incredibly important.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and season's greetings to you and the family. Thank you.
I don't know about this case, but I always think it's better to move the road rather than the tree, but that's my personal view. Assembly, the next question concerns the TfL business plan, and it's Assembly Member Bacon.
Thank you for your question. Last week, TfL published a draft of its 24 business plan. It sets out how TfL will be able to deliver a range of vital improvements to London's public transport network, as well as unlock new jobs and growth across London and the UK. The plan is predicated on TfL receiving capital investment funding from the government for 24-25 and future years. While I'm relieved we've agreed a one-year capital funding deal with DfT, this is some way from a decent long-term funding settlement that we need. TfL's business plan will improve Londoners' public transport experience by continuing to deliver existing major projects, including the 4 lines modernisation programme, the Piccadilly Line upgrade, and new trains on the DLR. Additional funding will be allocated to transform Elephant and Castle Station and for a feasibility study on the DLR extension to Thamesmead. TfL will continue to deliver on the bus action plan. The plan includes 25 kilometres of new bus lanes and supports the rollout of the Superloop. The business plan sees a growth in outer London bus kilometres by 4%. The new one-year capital funding deal with DfT will enable us to make vital upgrades to our transport network. However, it's vitally important we agree a decent long-term settlement from the government as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to ask a couple of follow-ups on specific areas in the business plan. Firstly, I'd like to ask about TfL staffing, and I would like to recognise the tremendous achievement in the upcoming business plan that TfL is covering their operating costs so soon after the pandemic, especially given minimal government support, unlike other transport authorities. But I am concerned about some unintended impacts, as I'm sure you would expect me to be. One aspect of the savings programme says that there'll be savings made by maintaining tight controls on recruitment and overtime. And at Budget and Performance on Tuesday, I was asking about this, but TfL were unable to let me know where in TfL they felt there were savings to be made, and instead we're talking about planned reorganisations. So I was concerned that effectively TfL are asking for a blank cheque to reduce staffing costs in an unplanned way, effectively, if there are future holes in the budget. Can you assure me that TfL do not have that sort of blank cheque in this business plan?
So just for full disclosure, since I've been mayor, we have reduced the number of staff at TfL. We've also reduced the number of non-permanent staff at TfL. For the first time in the history of TfL, we've reduced year on year from 2016 operating costs on a like-for-like basis and taken £1.1 billion out of the TfL budget. We're also going to take out another £600 million of our budget over the next 2 years. Why? Because the government's told us we've got to do so. I'm quite clear, though, that our staff are our best asset. They're conscientious, they're hard-working, they're dedicated. They kept our city going during the pandemic. 105 lost their lives. 105 transport workers lost their lives. So you have my reassurance. That's not going to be the first port of call. We're not going to, cut staff in the way you're suggesting, which is an understandable fear you've got, because obviously we've seen over the last 13 years the cheapest and best way to reduce costs, some people will think, is to cut staff. It's not the best way. It's a false economy. So I can give you that reassurance in relation to that. We're finding other ways to save money. One way we can save further money is we've made a massive reduction in agency workers. It's gone up a bit in the last year or two around a few areas, tech, data, engineering. Question, can we not change those to permanent staff with our apprentices and graduates, which will save money but also have in-house expertise? One of the things we're looking into.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that the concern is with such a sort of pretty vague statement, controls on recruitment, that what actually happens is vacancies are held open, filled with non-permanent labour, and actually costs go up. So that's why I'm concerned about that sort of statement. So the reassurance is really appreciated. And my other question is about bus contracts, and I did ask about this time last year as well, which is TfL's intention to reduce costs through reducing the amount spent on bus contracts. Again, if this is done in a planned way that maintains service and maintains the quality of staffing, and that's absolutely fine. But again, I'm concerned about the lack of specificity about how that will happen, because in the business plan it says this will happen by increasing bus speeds. Also fantastic, but that's going to take a bit of time, so not really sure how that connection is. So are you again confident that reductions in have you been given the assurances that reductions in bus contract costs won't impact on the quality or in fact the conditions of the staff?
This is a really important area to keep an eye on, because you can sometimes save money in the contract you pay, in the money you pay out for the contract. You've not seen the fine print in relation to what you're losing as a consequence of saving money in the contract. So the good news is, with us receiving 12.5% only, but it's 12.5% of our capital budget, we can now amend the business plan for next year, but it gives certainty to the bus team to negotiate contracts with bus operators, 7-year contracts. They will know the ambition is to increase buses in Outer London. We've seen a big increase in Outer London with the Superloop. We're going to increase further bus provision in Outer London. There may be a case in Central London where there's duplication because of walking, cycling and tube, Elizabeth Line, where there may be a reduction there. But the ambition definitely is to increase bus provision in Outer London, and indeed also in London as well where possible.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mayor.
Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you. Mayor Khan, when are you planning to refurbish the Rotherhithe Tunnel?
I've not got that information to hand. I'm happy to let you know. One of the issues we were waiting for with the Rotherhithe Tunnel was confirmation from the government around some funding. I think the A road, A4 is also an issue where we're concerned about. So there are 3 roads, I think, Chair, where we've got issues around maintenance. I can drop the member a line.
Yeah, I'd be grateful for that. I mean, are you concerned in any which way about the Rotherhithe Tunnel?
I beg your pardon, sorry, I didn't understand the question. Yeah, we are. There are 3 pieces of road infrastructure we are particularly concerned about. Rotherhithe is one of them. And so we are in discussions with the DFT. I'm just not on top of discussions this week, because one of the issues was around maintenance for Rotherhithe, which is a source of concern.
Well, I'm picking that up from very many places, so I am very concerned about the Rotherhithe Tunnel. I've been told that it could take 18 months, and if it's got serious issues, has it got serious issues? Are you concerned? And is it possible that it might have to close quite soon for 18 months?
I've not seen the 18 months figure you referred to. What I have seen is concern around not enough capital to maintain and renew that piece of infrastructure. Like I said, I think there are 3 pieces of infrastructure on the roads we are concerned about, and we've said to the government, without urgent remediation now, in the longer term, it may need to have longer closed longer. I'm not aware of the 18 months, but I'm happy to come back to you in relation to the deal we've done with the government and what that means for roads maintenance, because it's those roads that we're responsible for that we're particularly concerned about in relation to lack of capital support.
Well, it's the tunnel, because if that is closed, every one of us here knows that the problems that will cause in traffic in London. So if you could get back to us, please, as a matter of urgency. I've heard this from several different places, so I am very concerned.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly Member Hirani, please, to ask a question about the Autumn Statement 2023.
Big punch. Are we skipping over the question on the Elizabeth line, 4694?
I do apologise. Yes, that was withdrawn. I do apologise, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
Thanks for your question. It's deeply frustrating that the government seems unable to grasp the concept that a successful capital city is key to a successful country. The Autumn Statement was another squandered opportunity to recognise the important role London plays in powering our economy, generating prosperity and creating jobs and growth right across the UK. And despite the Chancellor's rhetoric on delivering a statement for growth, it clearly falls short in providing much-needed investment to boost the economy, especially in London. It failed to provide adequate support for London's businesses, including reforms for business rates and calls to reintroduce tax-free shopping. It's also failed to invest in improved housing, transport and other vital services that Londoners desperately need, with insufficient funding for affordable housing and no assurances of the future of High Speed 2 reaching Euston. Given the resourcing pressures on the Met Police Service, it was extremely disappointing that no additional police funding came forward. Meanwhile, the Home Office is refusing to fairly fund police recruitment in London or to properly fund the MPS for its protest and counter-terrorist responsibilities. Sadly, the statement also failed to deliver measures to help the most vulnerable Londoners through the cost of living crisis this winter. This is despite Londoners continuing to suffer from higher prices, higher energy bills and soaring housing costs as a result of this government's disastrous mismanagement of the economy. The failings of the Chancellor's budget, along with this government's failing economic policy and lack of support for vulnerable people, only goes to highlight what most of us already know, that this government isn't working.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The government had another opportunity to deliver some short-term financial relief for London in the local government settlement, which was published on Monday. Did that settlement deliver for London?
So we've been in touch with London councils, and London councils is cross-party. It's really important to emphasise that point. Labour, Conservative and Lib Dems. They are incredibly worried about a funding shortfall of at least £500 million, which has an impact on the services they provide, but also on their viability as well. So we're incredibly worried the impact on Londoners that could have, and we'll continue to lobby the government with London councils for the right commensurate support.
Thank you. Both the local government settlement and the Autumn Statement confirm that the government intends to keep cutting funding for public services, and yet they still say that local government has more spending power than it ever has had before. We all know what that means in reality. It's increases in council tax, which is how they're making that calculation, and sadly it follows a 60% cut in real terms in council core funding, which has led to boroughs like Harrow, Kingston, Havering, Croydon having the highest council tax in London. This week, Harrow in my constituency published their budget proposals for consultation, which shows a 4.99% increase in council tax, which could be up to £250 for some households in Harrow. You've mentioned in the past that council tax is a largely regressive tax. What are your views now following the local government settlement further? And is it right that Londoners now have some of the highest tax burdens that they've ever faced in their lifetime?
Look, there's three big issues posed as a consequence of the government's policies of the last 13 years, and you've really articulated some of those concerns. One is we've got to recognise the government's made massive cuts on public services over the last 30 and 40 years. That includes councils, it includes the GLA, it includes the Met Police Service, it includes TfL, it includes the Fire Brigade, it includes areas of social care as well. What the government is saying to the public is, oh, don't worry, the councils will find the money elsewhere. Council tax. Council tax is regressive, and those who are least able to pay it, in percentage terms, pay a similar amount to those who are able to pay more. So what councils are having to do, like the GLA, is to increase the maximum we can. Our council tax precept will have a hole that is even bigger than otherwise would be. Secondly, as a consequence of government policy, we've got what's called fiscal drag. So the thresholds in which people pay income tax have stayed the same. As their wages have increased, they've been sucked into 40% rates of tax than they weren't before. That's a big area of concern. And the third thing which Londoners are facing is massive increases in their mortgages because of Liz Truss's kamikaze budget. And so people are seeing massive increases, £400, £500, £600 a year because of a direct consequence of Tory policies.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Assembly Member Hall.
What about the £12.50 that is a consequence of your policy that nobody wants, that nobody wanted, that you are imposing on the poorest Londoners, the very poorest Londoners, £12.50. That is a tax that they shouldn't be paying, that they're paying every single day. So I think we ought to bear that in mind when we're talking about Londoners being taxed, Mr. Mayor.
Well, Chair, let me respond to the question I've been asked, which is only fair.
Just 1 second, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps the member could tie that into the autumn statement, the question of the autumn statement.
With respect, I was talking about the amount of money that Londoners are being taxed. The member was talking about council tax at 4 point something.
Thank you.
Not the 8 point something percent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, could you respond, please?
So sure, the ultra-low emission zone is not a tax. It's a charge we brought in 2017, the precursor, in an effort to clean up the area in our city. And we've seen in central London a reduction by almost 50% of toxicity. In inner London, when it's expanded, a reduction of a further 20%. But I think all 9 million Londoners deserve to breathe clean air. The good news, 19 out of 20 cars seen driving in outer London are ULEZ compliant, don't pay a penny more. There's still money left in the scrappage scheme, and I'd encourage anybody who's got a non-compliant car to apply for the scrappage scheme.
Thank you so much. When I'm campaigning in outer London, which I'm doing all the time, I will say, no, dear Londoner, this is not a tax. This is a charge that Mayor Khan, after 8 years, is imposing upon you. Please don't call it a tax. It's a charge, and I'm sure they'll feel much better about that. So Londoners watching this, it's a charge, apparently. It's not a tax. These £12.50 amounts you have to pay every day are a charge. They're not a tax.
Well, Chair, one of the things the Chancellor could have done in the autumn statement was to give London what he's given to Bristol, Birmingham and Portsmouth, which is a contribution towards our scrappage scheme. So those Londoners, 1 out of 20, who drive and have a non-compliant car could benefit from a generous scrappage scheme, including those outside London as well. The Chancellor chose not to do so. I'd hope colleagues in this Assembly who are concerned about the ultra-low emission zone and the scrappage scheme would lobby the government for London to receive what Birmingham, Bristol and Portsmouth receive.
Thank you. Assembly Member Fortune, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly on this, I wasn't going to mention ULEZ today, but here we are again. I spoke with Seb about this the other day. Can you commit to getting us the air quality report from the expanded ULEZ zone before we hit the pre-election period? Because I spoke to you about this last time, and you said you'd look into it. Then I got a letter from Seb saying he wasn't going to do it. But that date is there, so can we have a look at that?
I think I know you're not intentionally misleading the Assembly. So in the past, what's happened is that there wasn't, in the first Central London scheme, a monthly figure for vehicles that are compliant and so forth. We've now improved upon that, so that there's information given on compliance at the end of the first month, at the end of the 6th month. The air quality data, which is what the member wants, the air quality data simply isn't available until more than 12 months later. So I think what TfL have agreed to do is what they've done in the past. Data after a month, and every month they publish the monthly figures for compliance. The data after 6 months, and then after 12 months, the air quality data, as they've done with Central London and Inner London.
Just to clarify, because I know you wouldn't want to mislead the Assembly either, the last report was at 1 month and 6 months and 12 months. The first report was at 1 month and 4 months and 10 months. So that we can do it at different times. And the request is, respectfully, the request is, can we see some of the air quality data before we go into the pre-election period?
No, but it's important to be clear and to be accurate. The 4-month report that was published after Central London did not contain air quality information. And so what I'm more than happy to do is to provide the information available. It's not my information. It's information ascertained in relation to the monitors and so forth. And my understanding from TfL is the 4-month report has been improved upon because now there's data every month. So more information out there now than ever before. The air quality data, though, will not be available till 12 months later. If it can be available sooner, more than happy for that to be available sooner. But I'm more than happy for the member to speak to the relevant team at TfL as well as Seb Dart to see what can be made available. The sooner the better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next question, I am aware that there's some concerns about the relevance of interventions on other questions, But to be not misquoted on this assembly, I think there does need to be a degree of laxity on this, so people are allowed to ask the questions that they want. Should there be some serious concerns about the way in which this is applied, then I think the Bureau is the best place to raise this. But for the moment, I'm just working on precedent. So. The next question is it concerns fire safety in London and is in the name of Assembly Member Bukhari.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I've always been clear that fire safety is a top priority for me. We owe it to those who lost their lives in the Grenfell Tower fire and to bereaved and survivors to ensure such a tragedy never happens again. The Deputy Mayor for Fire and Resilience and her team work closely with the London Fire Brigade to promote fire safety and help keep Londoners safe. The London Fire Brigade provides safety advice to Londoners through its online home fire safety checker, which I've regularly promoted. This tool provides Londoners with tailored safety advice and identifies individuals in high-risk groups who are then contacted by the brigade within 4 hours and receive a visit from firefighters. Building safety is, of course, a key part of fire safety. I've repeatedly called for second staircases to be required in tall buildings, as an additional staircase provides alternative options for both residents and firefighters in the event of a fire. I've also used my London Plan and funding programmes to go further than the national regulations, for example requiring sprinklers and imposing a complete ban on combustible cladding on all new homes. But this is a national issue and the government has simply not made enough change since the Grenfell Tower fire. Fires from lithium-ion batteries in e-bikes and e-scooters are the greatest emerging fire risk in London, and I pay tribute to Maria Macaro and Alda Simos, who are campaigning for change following the devastating death of their daughter and friend, Sophia Duarte, in January this year. The LFB is also raising awareness of the risk associated with these products through the hashtag #ChargeSafe campaign, which the Deputy Mayor and I have both supported. The London Fire Brigade has been particularly active in promoting the safe purchasing of e-bikes and e-scooters during the Black Friday and Christmas sales. Earlier this month, the Deputy Mayor met with the Fire Minister to discuss this important issue, and in November, she and the Walking and Cycling Commissioner wrote to the Transport Minister calling for the government to urgently bring forward new measures to prevent the sale of unsafe products and regulate online marketplaces. The Deputy Mayor also recently hosted an event in Parliament with MPs, Lords and Assembly members to build support for this campaign.
Thank you. Lithium-ion batteries contain the energy of 6 hand grenades. When a battery fails, it causes thermal runaway, leading to a fire that burns at 600 degrees Celsius. Fires rated to lithium-ion batteries in e-bikes and e-scooters are up by 47% in London, and these fires have tragically killed 3 people and injured 60. This is now a public safety emergency. I called for a public safety awareness campaign very early on, and I welcomed the launch and the success of the LFB's ChargeSafe campaign, but sadly I'm really worried it's not reaching enough people, particularly those who are not online. Now, you've recently advertised free school meal policy and housing achievements on the Tube and on TfL services. Would you now consider working with the LFB and the TfL to promote ChargeSafe campaign across the Tube network and other TfL services with similar adverts?
Chair, we'll always look at what we can do, and we'll look into what more we can do. But listen, that awareness by itself is inadequate. It's just inadequate. There's not enough regulation in the online marketplace. There's no regulatory framework that's fit for purpose in relation to this issue around lithium batteries, poor quality. And so, of course, we can look into what we can do in the meantime in relation to ChargeSafe, supporting and amplifying the campaign. But what we really need is for regulation in this dangerous area. The member's spot on in relation to this being an emerging threat. If you look at New York, New York's a year or two ahead of us in relation to the catastrophe they're seeing there. So we'll do what we can in relation to public education. More than happy to.
I'd really appreciate that. I mean, if you can promote it even more within similar adverts, that would just make it easier for people to get that message, because it's just not enough having it just online. Now, with Christmas coming up, e-bikes and e-scooters are going to be on that Christmas list. Assistant Commissioner Charlie Pugsley was on BBC London recently saying that we should only buy from reputable sellers. But how do people know about reputable companies that are selling them? Now, Dan Parsons from Poorly Charged, he told me that reputable e-bike retailers like his are actually struggling
struggling right now, facing pressure and competition from non-reputable online providers selling cheaper and unsafe products. So to increase that public awareness, will you take the opportunity now to encourage all reputable sellers to work with the LFB to promote the Charge Safe campaign, which could in turn actually help their businesses?
More than happy to, but the issue isn't the reputable sellers. They're not the issue. Amazon have been very good online. eBay have been very good online. They're not the issue. The issue is the retailers that aren't reputable, those selling online that aren't reputable. That's why we need legislation, because there is an opportunity that people aren't reputable are using, and the buyer's not aware. And so your point about public education is so important. We want buyers to be aware. But if you can save money on a gift, you'll try and save money on a gift, not realising the dangers. And you've talked to some of the victims of this and the dangers it causes. So public awareness we will do, and we'll carry on working with the brilliant, good, reputable retailers, online and face-to-face. But our concern should be those who aren't.
Absolutely, we need to do more with that legislation, and it'd be great to have your support in lobbying the government to push forward and speed up on this much needed legislation going forward. So thank you very much for your support, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Will the Assembly agree to suspend Standing Order 2.9b in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 1.1h in order to allow the remaining business on the agenda to be completed? Nobody is against that. Good. We'll next move to the next question concerning the war in Ukraine from Assembly Member Devenish.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the question. We must remember that this war continues to rage on the borders of Europe, having a devastating impact on innocent men, women and children. I'm horrified at the reports of so many children being taken from Ukraine into Russia, and those that remain are unfairly robbed of their childhood. TfL's advertising estate is managed by its media partners under contract. TfL is unable to offer advertising space outside of a commercial agreement, as the primary aim of its advertising estate is to generate revenue to be reinvested back into the transport system. I'm determined to show our support for the people of Ukraine in other ways. In March last year, we helped organise and I stood alongside the Ukrainian ambassador and thousands of Londoners in the March and Vigil for Ukraine. The Assembly was represented by its chair, and the Mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, spoke to us from his home city as we came together in solidarity. I continue to attend events in support of the Ukrainian community in London wherever possible, including community events and church services, and I was proud to meet with a delegation from Kyiv at City Hall earlier this year alongside 3 of my deputy mayors. London is for everyone, with a strong history of providing sanctuary to those fleeing conflict. I'm proud that Londoners have welcomed and opened their homes to over 17,000 Ukrainians under the Homes for Ukraine scheme, with thousands more finding sanctuary in the city under other schemes such as the Ukraine Family Visa. And earlier this year, I announced funding for 630 new homes for Ukrainian and Afghan refugees to support those impacted by conflict. The GLA website also hosts information on how Londoners can support Ukrainians, and there's also a page that informs Londoners about how they can donate vehicles to charities working in Ukraine. The GLA will also continue to work with its functional bodies on opportunities for vehicle donations so they can make through national donation schemes. The London Fire Brigade has already donated 2 vehicles in this way, and will of course continue to fly the Ukrainian flag outside City Hall as we have done since the start of the war. Londoners stand shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainians and will continue to offer support to those impacted by this conflict.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Mayor. I'm a bit concerned, though, that you're talking about a TfL commercial partner won't allow you to have anything else on your hoardings. Surely you could talk to them about having additional hoardings or some space. This is a war, and the way the media unfortunately have dropped this story because of other stories coming in to the media, frankly means that Mr. Putin is getting what he wants, which is to starve Ukraine out. We must do everything we can. I know you've done a lot, but can you think of other things that you can do, please, sir, to provide even more support? Because if this story drops off the front page during next year, Putin will win, and that will be appalling.
I think the member raises a really powerful point in a very collegiate way. Can I suggest that I ask the Deputy Mayor and TfL to meet with him to explore opportunities we can have to raise awareness? He's spot on. We're not talking about Ukraine anymore. We're not condemning Putin anymore, and it's fallen out of the fore of our minds. So, Chair, can I promise to take that away and ask TfL to meet with him and Deputy Mayor as soon as possible?
Thank you for that answer, and Merry Christmas to everybody in Ukraine and all the Ukrainians in London.
Assembly Member Hall, please.
Thank you very much, and we do all agree around this table, I'm sure, that we will stand with them come what may. I know that Vitaly Kachetsku, the Mayor of Kyiv, actually asked if they could have, on behalf of the Cars for Ukraine charity, asked if he could have vehicles from the scrappage scheme. Now, I know, I believe it came from your office, that they said that it was, quote, not a benefit to Londoners. I can't see how not helping Ukraine in any way can be anything but a benefit to Londoners, because Russia may not be allowed to carry on with this. Now, I know you say it's not for you to do, but can you tell me what you've done since June, July, or whenever he asked? What have you done to try and allow these scrappage cars to go to Ukraine?
Well, firstly, it's Vitaly Klitschko, who's the mayor of...
I apologise.
What he's asked for are 4x4 vehicles and pickup trucks. So we've been speaking to government departments about how we can facilitate those vehicles that may otherwise be scrapped. And what's required is for the government, through the Environment Agency, to change the regulations. I know that well-respected former Secretary of State Ben Wallace has talked about this today, calling on the government to do much more. And basically what the government's got to do is make it possible for an authorised treatment facility to give a certificate of destruction without destroying the vehicle, and allowing that vehicle to instead go to a charity in Ukraine. At the moment, the authorised treatment facility gives the certificate for destruction to the car owner, who then gives it to TfL and receives the remuneration for the scrappage scheme without a change from the government in these regulations. There's nothing the ATF or TfL can do. I'm hoping Ben Wallace, with his contacts, can persuade the government to finally move in this area.
But when did you start asking government?
In contact with the Foreign Office since the beginning in relation to this and other issues and other agencies of the government. And by the way, the same applies to Bristol, Birmingham and Portsmouth. If the government was to change the regulations, it would impact those cars in those parts of London, the country as well, which have scrappage schemes.
So you got involved right from the very beginning? Because I've made some inquiries and I can't find evidence of that, but if you say you have, you have. Can you tell me when you got involved and what you actually did?
Well, I've not got the details here, Chair. What I can say is that City Hall officials have been in touch with the government since the beginning.
Okay, and you normally are very passionate about getting involved in things that you can't do anything about, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of passion going into this. Many of us feel quite strongly about this. Instead of scrapping these vehicles, which I've often wondered, you know, the value of scrapping lots and lots of things, instead of that, these vehicles could be used out in Kyiv. Some of the vehicles could be used as ambulances, etc. They are desperate for our help. I wish you'd put some more of your passion into this, Mr. Mayor.
Well, Chair, I'm always appreciative of advice about passion, but the issue is this, that the vehicles that Mayor Klitschko has asked for are specific vehicles in relation to 4x4 vehicles and pickup trucks. What we've said to those charities doing brilliant work in Ukraine is there needs to be a change in the regulations. We're hopeful those regulations will change, but I want to raise hope in relation to the percentage of vehicles that would otherwise be scrapped that are useful for the issues that Kyiv wants them for. We mustn't give the impression that every single vehicle being scrapped could be diverted towards Kyiv. There's also another point which is very important to keep at the fore of our mind, which is the importance of safeguards taking place. Because I'm sure I'd be criticised if it was the case a vehicle that was supposed to be destroyed wasn't destroyed and was registered again with DVLA to be driving around the streets of London or the country. That's why these processes the government has in place through the Environment Agency, which we fully support. If it's the case, the government wants to make some changes in these exceptional circumstances, we would fully support that.
Well, just to let you know that Cars for Ukraine want cars and vans for ambulances and logistics. So perhaps can you try and see if you can facilitate this anyway? We must help Ukrainians in any which way that we can. And it's certainly, if they're asking for cars and vans for different reasons, then we really should see what we can do. It can't be beyond the wit of all of us to get together when we all want to go in the same direction, surely.
Well, Chair, we'll continue to engage with Mayor Klitschko in relation to this issue. We'll continue to work with the government. I think this is not an issue that's party political. I think it's an issue that all of us want to see support given to Ukraine. And the member's spot on. If we can recycle vehicles here that can be used by colleagues in Kyiv or other parts of Ukraine, of course we want that to happen. And so we're keeping everything crossed that we can have some progress here. And any help she can give us with her contacts in the government will be much appreciated.
Absolutely, and I will do. And it isn't party political, but it is an emergency. And I think most of us would agree that this is something that should be dealt with as soon as possible. Those poor souls need help, especially when the winter comes in as it has. They need more and more help out there. Thank you, Chair.
I think if we could stay on the clock for that. I raised this issue with you back in September, and I would be grateful if you could write to me as soon as possible to indicate the communications that your office has had with the Department of Transport to sort out this issue, because as far as I know, we could have been told this many months ago about the approved scrappage dealers, but that wasn't the case. So I'd like to know a timeline of the communications from your office with regard to that.
I don't think the issue is DFT.
DFT.
Yeah, that's not the issue. But I'll write you to explain what the issue is.
Please do.
And also contact with the Foreign Office as well.
Yeah, that's fine, but it's more about this approved scrappage scheme problem that we've had, that I'd like to see what activity your office has been carrying out in that time. Anyway, off the clock now. Thank you. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Berry, and it concerns acquiring existing homes for social housing.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your question. Too many Londoners are trapped in poor quality, overcrowded housing. At the sharpest end are the 1 in 50 Londoners who are homeless, including 1 in 23 children. That means on average, 1 child in every classroom across the city doesn't have secure housing. Despite record-breaking delivery across London that will help solve the housing crisis in the longer term, building new homes is not a short-term solution to this urgent problem. There's a clear and urgent need for an injection of new supply through an acquisition programme. London boroughs are currently spending an eye-watering £60 million a week on temporary accommodation. This is unsustainable. The broader costs of poor quality housing are also borne by the NHS. Recent City Hall research has found that repairing London's damp, mouldy and hazardous homes could save the NHS £100 million a year. Acquisitions programmes like the Council Homes Acquisition Programme, CHAP, can help to reduce these costs. The government's recognised the value of acquisitions by allowing them to be included in the Affordable Homes Programme, which is of course primarily focused on new builds. This is allowed because acquisitions are recognised to deliver value for money alongside social and economic benefits as part of a mix of approaches to tackling the affordable housing crisis. Through our London Housing Delivery Task Force, the sector also highlighted the fact that in many circumstances it's currently more expensive to build new homes than it is to buy. Many providers are down in tools as they wait for reduced interest rates and certainty on building safety requirements. Given this difficult operating environment and the vital need for new council homes, it's right for councils to use a small proportion of grant funding to acquire existing homes. London's housing emergency will not be solved overnight, and that's why I've set a 10-year target for acquisitions. But I'm concerned that the government's given no guarantees of the funding available to London after March 26. My housing team is prioritising conversations with DLUC to secure early commitment for an AHP funding settlement for 26 onwards. Research by Savills demonstrates that London needs £4.9 billion a year, and I'm calling on the government to make good on this.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. That was a good, solid, long answer. And to be clear, I'm really very pleased that we're seeing much more focus going onto buying council homes, not just building them. We need both of those things. We need the right balance of spending between them as well. Now, I've had good conversations with Tom Copley at various meetings in this chamber, but I'm not yet getting specifics in terms of what economic benefits are being counted in these arguments that you're having with government, which is why I've tabled the question. You've mentioned broadly savings to the NHS, savings to housing benefit, but there's also, for example, in comparison to building, the speed of buying homes, the carbon savings you get from not doing construction. There's also broader social benefits of just getting more council homes, like educational benefits, health benefits that include mental health benefits, which are not covered by your research note. So I've asked you about this before, and specifically asking you to evaluate the right to buy back fund. And you've told me your officers are informally monitoring its benefits. So I'm going to push you again to try and get you to do more formal evaluation of the benefits of the right to buy back fund, so that we can make the long-term case for long-term funding to government that's absolutely watertight.
Well, Chair, I won't hold my breath with this government, but the member makes a really important point about the evidence base, which we can use for subsequent governments as well. Let me take that away, because I think you're right in relation to not just the pragmatic reasons why it's a smart thing to do in relation to homes now, but secondly, the other benefits that actually can be quantified, aside from the lack of human misery, but can be quantified. So let me take that away, because I think it may be useful, like I said, not in the next 12 months, but as an evidence base going forward.
Excellent. Yeah, I'd really like to see that. At the moment, we think there's a gap. We've asked you how many homes are going to be produced through the Council Home Acquisition Programme. It's 2,700, which leaves 7,300 to go from your target, for which we've got to make the case for more money.
No, it's really important that we answer. Go on. So the AHP deal we have with the government, the Affordable Housing Programme, only allows us to acquire 10%.
Exactly. Yeah. So post 26.
So the 10% we'll get there. That's not the issue. The issue I thought the member was making, which is the evidence base to justify doing this with more funding.
That is exactly what I was asking. Exactly. Yeah, sorry.
But as you're speaking, it occurred to me there are also benefits to our economy in terms of more productivity if people have got decent housing and so forth. So let me take that away, because I think I'm attracted to the idea.
Yeah.
Because we can quantify this, which makes the and I apologise for going there, but the business case for doing so rather than the other important reasons.
That's completely it. I mean, yeah, when you build a new road, you get to count all kinds of wider economic benefits, and this is very much the same kind of thing. So, I mean, the key thing here is that we know whoever's going to be in the Treasury after the next election, the fiscal purse strings are going to be very, very tight, and we collectively should be making that economic case to make sure that that money is invested, because it is going to produce economic benefits.
And also the point you make, which is very powerful, is also the benefit of a long-term deal. Because even if money's tight, having funding for 3-5 years or longer means we can plan and do this stuff. So I get it. Also, councils can plan; they'll take on staff and so on. So let me take this away. I may speak to the member offline about further things that the team may not have thought about that would be really sensible and really useful to do.
Okay, great. Now, with my final 40 seconds, while we're here, and Merry Christmas, by the way, as part of all of this equation, right to buy has to go, doesn't it? I mean, that is something that is dragging away every numbers of homes that we're building and we're buying. But even in the face of fiscal rules that are very, very tight, this is a policy that will save money. It won't cost money. So how are you making sure that this doesn't just go into your manifesto, but also the National Labour manifesto next time?
Right to buy, right to buy back.
Sorry. Right to buy has to go. That's taking away homes that we need.
So one of the things that we've said to the government is they should devolve to different regions the power to decide whether right to buy goes or not. What may be right for London may not be right for Grimsby, because I recognise the aspiration to be a homeowner.
Are you going to get that in the Labour manifesto for the nation?
That's above my pay grade.
Okay, well, let's work on that together. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The next question concerns announcements, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Devenish.
Thank you, Chair. We're confident that I'm the most transparent Mayor ever. We put transparency at the heart of everything we do, and our commitment goes well beyond the mandatory local government transparency code. We publish interest, gifts, hospitality and expenses for me, the mayoral advisors and senior Greater London Authority officers. We publish details of senior officer responsibilities, salary data and a geo...
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I've only got 1 minute left. Would you summarise, please?
No, I'll answer the question how I want to. We publish hundreds of data sets on the London Data Store and the results of a monthly poll of 1,000 Londoners. We publish gender and ethnicity pay audit data and action plans. We've signed up to the Code of Practice for Statistics, becoming the first organisation to do this voluntarily. We're rigorous about both statutory and non-statutory consultations. We publish my diary and I publish my personal tax returns. It's entirely appropriate that I, as Mayor, use multiple communications channels to update Londoners on the progress of my work,
people's questions,
including media and social media. I believe the member is referring to an interview published in the Spectator magazine on the 14th of October. Unlike the previous mayor, I don't get paid huge sums for writing in the Daily Telegraph, Mail on Sunday,
I'm so sorry.
and Spectator magazines while
He's box
mayor.
office, though, and you're not.
I spoke for free about many things to the Spectator, including his party's mayoral candidate weaponising the Jewish community.
Well, he's talked me out again, Chairman. What a Democrat he is. Merry Christmas.
I mean, Chair.
I've run out of time,
Chair.
thank you.
The mayor...
I mean, how rude can you get?
A big question.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I agree, Mr.
We've been
Mayor.
chuntering all morning. Someone should give him breakfast.
OK, the next question, the Conservative group is now out of time.
We're out of time.
The next question concerns lowest income Londoners, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Ahmad.
Thanks for this important question. The government's autumn statement included some measures that could support some low-income Londoners. For example, cutting national insurance contributions, uprating working age benefits and increasing local housing allowance rates. But these measures do not go far enough to support the lowest income Londoners given the severity of the capitalist cost of living crisis. The view positive measures are also offset by other government policies that continue to hurt lowest income Londoners, such as the two-child limit and benefit cap, as well as the freezing of income tax thresholds until 2028. A Londoner who earns £20,000 before tax would save about £110 per annum as a result of the cut to national insurance contributions announced in the statement. But that same Londoner would lose at least £600 if they earn inflation-matching pay rises as a result of the freezing of income tax thresholds that this government is maintaining until 2028. Another example is the uprating of working age benefits by 6.7%. Data from the ONS shows that prices of necessities such as food and rent have risen by more than 6.7%, and research from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation shows that working age benefits currently do not even cover essential household spending. So it's clear the government's once again missed an opportunity to show support for low-income Londoners. And actually, the Chancellor, ahead of the statement, I called for him to implement the Joseph Rowntree Foundation's call for essentials guarantee, which would ensure universal credit protects people from going without basic essentials. I've also been calling for him to scrap the benefits cap and the two-child limit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the Resolution Foundation found that by the end of this Parliament, disposable incomes are falling and households will be £1,900 worse off than they were at the start of the Parliament for the first time in modern history. Furthermore, wages are now set to remain below their 2008 level until 2028. It appears that this government is inactive in addressing the falling living standards, as you have just explained to us. Can you explain what this actually means for London's economy, please?
Can I just repeat something that you said in your question that just demands repeating, which is, for the first time in the history of our Parliament, the first time ever, disposable income for households at the end of that Parliament is less than it was at the beginning. It shows this government's not working for working people. And we can see that in the conversations you and I have with our hard-working constituents across our city. And we have a new phenomenon in recent times, in-work poverty. In-work poverty. So people doing the right thing and working, often 2-3 jobs, but they can't make ends meet. And the safety net they used to have is being taken away more and more by the government, more holes in that safety net. And we see it in the food banks. We see it in advice surgeries, we see it at CABs, we see it in law centres, we see it with rough sleepers. Rough sleeping is not a lifestyle choice. A lifestyle choice. That's what they said, a lifestyle choice. And so look, we've got to make sure that we support those Londoners who are most vulnerable. But also, for the first time, there are more and more Londoners just about managing who have a home, who have a job or 2 or 3 and struggling to make ends meet. That's why I'm really proud that most of you voted to provide, for the first time ever, free school meals for every child in primary schools in this city. You supported me continue to provide free travel for children below the age of 18, supporting those above the age of 60 with free travel, hopper fare for the first time ever, supporting law centres and CABs with the support they're given, installation and so forth. But you know what? We're only helping a bit, because we've not got the powers or resources. We need the government to support us more, and I'm hoping the government does give us some more emergency support this winter, or if not, at least something more tangible in spring.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and for raising the issue about in-work poverty. As you will be aware, the universal credit claimants in London, 40% of universal credit claimants are now actually in work. So thank you for raising that issue. Thank you, Mr Mayor, for the answer. Merry Christmas to you and your family. And Chair, congratulations to you and your husband on your wedding anniversary. Thank you.
I'm just hoping that he likes bunches of flowers bought from filling stations. Yeah. That's all.
Andrew, you're digging your own hole, man.
So, you're not watching, are you, guys? Oh, yeah, anyway, let's next move on to a question concerning vaccination rates. And that's in the name of Assembly Member Clark on this occasion.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the question. Vaccines provide vital protection against a range of deadly infectious diseases and also help to protect others. I'd urge all eligible Londoners to ensure that they and their children are up to date with their vaccinations. I fully support partners and local authorities as they work together to improve vaccine access and uptake, particularly amongst our most vulnerable communities. When the NHS launched their autumn COVID and flu vaccination campaign in September, I supported their efforts by promoting the information to encourage uptake from eligible Londoners and contributed to an NHS media announcement on how to access vaccines. Since the September launch, 1.68 million eligible Londoners have received their flu vaccinations and over 919,000 have received their COVID boosters. These are important milestones and a testament to the hard work of healthcare workers across the city. We're on a festive period when lots of people will be coming together with their families and friends. I recently had my flu jab and COVID booster to protect mine and my family's health and to reassure and remind Londoners who haven't had theirs that getting vaccinated is the best way to keep themselves and others from getting ill during colder months. I'll continue to use my communications channels to urge Londoners not to delay their bookings through the NHS website, app and 119 service closed on the 15th of December, but eligible Londoners can still book direct through their GP.
Thank you so much for that. I'm just wondering how are you and the GLA working to encourage vaccine uptake in communities which typically have lower rates of vaccine uptake?
And the reason why the question is so important is we saw during the pandemic this new phrase of vaccine hesitancy. We've seen for the first time what we knew, but the government realised, and actually in some communities there's distrust with officialdom and so forth, but also in London, younger population, more transient, more black, Asian, minority ethnics, less likely to be registered with a GP. And so the relationships that were built up during the pandemic we've used to try and encourage the take-up of vaccines for COVID, flu and the other issues. And we know, by the way, these Londoners tend to be in zero-hours contracts and jobs they've got to go to, otherwise they're not going to get paid. And so them falling ill benefits nobody. And so we're building on the progress made, working with NHS and UCSHA to make sure we get more and more Londoners vaccinated.
Thank you for that. And what impact would a low vaccination rate have on our NHS services?
One of the things that I wasn't aware about until relatively recently was the low uptake of the MMR. Mm-hmm. And so the reason why that's so important is many of us received it as children and have received, other boosters. But there are more and more parents who didn't give their children the MMR, and there's a possibility, I'm told, of a measles outbreak, which I can't remember a measles outbreak because of the great work of our scientists, epidemiologists and so forth. So that's an example of the consequence of not having the right immunity and stuff. And so I'd encourage anybody who may have children of the right age to check whether your children have had the MMR and just speak to your friends, neighbours and colleagues, just to encourage them to have these vaccinations. They do work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really important message. I also just had my my flu jab as well, and it does help keep us healthy. And just because we've been off to go a little off piece, I just wanted to say how really pleased I was to read in Time Out that London is the top Christmas destination not just in the UK but in the whole world.
In the world.
And
that's right.
You know what? Thank you for continuing to bang the drum for London.
No,
it does make a huge difference to have.
A lot come by aeroplane.
Yeah.
United or otherwise.
But also, to come on to that, since we're talking about American tourists, I first came here as a student from the US, and I think having a mayor who does really encourage tourism, encourage friends, family, businesses from the US to visit London is positive. So thank you very much, and I'm wishing you and your family a very...
You too. Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question concerns gender-inclusive climate adaptation, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Polanski.
I'll just check. If I answer the question as read, it will take up all your time. Do you want to ask your supplementary tonight?
That would be great if you're happy to do it. Thanks. Thanks for the Christmas spirit. So, today I've launched a report. I've been working with UCL researchers and women all over the world from Nepal, Tanzania, India, Argentina and the Philippines, alongside Caroline and Sean as well, who came to the workshops. And essentially the report is about the clear impacts of the climate crisis, particularly on marginalised genders, and it's really important that we lift up their voices. So my supplementary question just is, what are you doing to make sure those voices are included in the Climate Resilience Review?
I've not read the report.
Of course, I only just published it.
I'd be keen to read the report. I mean, you raise a really important issue. I wasn't fully seized of this until a few years ago, that the issue of global justice is also an issue of social justice and gender justice, or injustice, as it might be. But the interesting thing is, it's on a micro and a macro level. I've not read your report yet, so it was mentioned before by Senator Fortune that I'm lucky to be the chair of C40. One of the things I've done is to make sure there's a co-chair, from the global majority, global south, but she is a woman who understands some of the issues you talk about. She's the mayor of Freetown. So I'm more than happy to read your report, but also you learn every day in relation to some of the issues. But we see it in London as well. It's not just in relation to the macro levels, also in London. I'm afraid it's affecting women more than men.
It's really good to hear you talking about this. What have you learnt from working with women around the Climate Resilience Review?
Simple things in relation to the homes that are flooded. Women affected more than men. Simple things like the impact on who doesn't use public transport as a consequence of the environment. Issues to do with homes that are energy efficient, those homes that aren't. The point made by the colleagues in relation to the transition from a non-polluting vehicle, often women, to a polluting vehicle, how we can make that easier, therefore the scrappage scheme. One of the things that the review's undertaken, that you know about, you've asked before, is making sure the review looks into what adaptations and resilience have got to do to make sure there isn't gender unfairness in relation to those adaptations and resilience as well. I think everything's got to be on the table, and you raising the issue means that it's at the fore of our minds.
I think this is spot on, and just to check, it's an ongoing process and not just a one-stop check.
No, it can't be. So you raised previously the issue of disability groups. It's not just it's all those protected characteristics, but also those unseen consequences of climate change that we've got to address, and air quality, by the way.
Thank you. Have a great holiday to you and your family.
You
Thanks,
too.
Chair.
There being no other questions, can I ask... well, it is the end of the questions, so Mr Mayor, you are free to go.
Thank you very much. Chair, before we go, can I wish all the Assembly and their families a really happy Christmas? I know you've worked incredibly hard this year. We have the knockabout stuff during MQTs and sometimes on social media, but genuinely, I hope you have a great Christmas. Hope you spend some quality time with your family, and look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Thank you. Yeah. Have a good one.
I think the Labour Party's present to the rest of the Assembly is finishing 10 minutes early.
Absolutely.
So,
We really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Can I ask the Assembly to agree the motion which is set out on the agenda in my name, that the Assembly notes the answers to the questions asked? Can I ask the Assembly to note the recent action taken by me as Chair of the London Assembly in accordance with the authority delegated to me, namely to agree not to hold a confirmation hearing in relation to the proposed appointment of John Preston as Chair of the London Pensions Authority? The next scheduled meeting of the London Assembly will be Mayor's Question Time meeting, which will take place at 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 18th of January, in the chamber at City Hall. And finally, one item that I do consider urgent is I'd like to thank Lauren for her first time in charge of Mayor's Question Time. And Rebecca will pleased that it didn't end in a smoking mess. But so thank you for that. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all the committee staff who've made these possible over the year. The scrutiny teams who've supported us and made us look clever. Well, some of us look clever. And also to the security team who keep us safe. Yay. So with that being said, they all deserve a thoroughly good break over Christmas. So thank you very much. And with that, enjoy.
This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast